the City Council Special Work Session of Grand Haven, January 3rd, 2022, will now come to order. And at this time, we're going to have a presentation on the Municipal Employees Retirement System of Michigan, presented by Mike Overly, who is the Regional Manager for the MERS system. Mr. Overly, if you could.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate it. Thank you, Council. Hope everybody had a Merry Christmas. Can you hear me okay with the mask here? Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me out, and I appreciate your flexibility and allowing me to come out here in early January. I can't believe it's 2022 already. You should have, I think you probably have multiple copies of a couple of these documents, but I distributed to Council two separate documents. One says MERS, City of Grand Haven. It's this guy here, the one that's on the screen here. That's the primary focus of our conversation. I know it's a lot, so I will not go through everything because you want to go home at some point tonight, I'm sure. The other document is the actuarial analysis regarding the city's plans and the plan change options that I sort of summarized in this document. So that document was completed by our actuarial consultant, Gabriel Roeder Smith. That's the official calculations, the source of truth, if you will. If you've looked through that document already, that document can be a little intimidating. There's a lot of information there. So I wanted to give you something that maybe would connect a little bit better and try to connect the dots for you. So that's the purpose of the two documents today. So I'll jump right in, and Ashley's going to scroll for me. So over on page 2, just quickly, again, my name is Mike Overly. I've been with MERS closing in on 17 years now. Work with the communities in West Michigan here. Appreciate the partnership that the City of Grand Haven has had with MERS since 1993 as a part of our pension program. And then in the years since, really in a variety of different plans that MERS offers as well. I do want to mention, really highlighting here on the top of page 2, that MERS is governed by a 9-member board. 6 of those 9 members are elected by our membership at our annual conference that takes place in different locations each year. We have a variety of different perspectives on the board. So we have what we call officer members. We have 3 of them. Those are individuals at local units of government that have management responsibility at their municipality. We also have employee members, so those are non-managers that sit on our board. And then we have 2 outside investment experts, so private sector investment experts, if you will, and then 1 retiree member, so someone who's drawing a pension check or getting a direct deposit from MERS on a monthly basis. So I really like that. This council, would it be okay if I took my mask down when presenting? Is that okay? Thank you, I appreciate it. Otherwise, I'll start huffing and puffing here. I appreciate that. The nice piece.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure, yes,
Would
ma'am.
you prefer that we reserve questions, or are we okay
Oh, I should have said
injecting questions?
that. Yes, please feel free at any time.
Okay,
I'm glad
I have a quick question, which is,
Yeah.
I'm surprised to see you're a nonprofit. So what is your relationship to the state of Michigan?
Great question. The short answer is we were a part of the state of Michigan once upon a time. So when MERS was created in 1946, we were a department of the state of Michigan. In 1996, we separated from the state of Michigan primarily due to a need for growth. So as a department of the state at that time, mid-90s, hiring freezes, not having the ability to really add staff, and I was not there at that time. This predates me by about 10 years. But the unique thing about the state of Michigan and MERS in particular is that each local unit of government, whether it's a county, a city, a road commission, library, township, what have you, can choose the type of retirement plan they want to offer if they want to offer one in the first place. Unlike, say, the public schools, if you're a public school teacher, depending on when you're hired, you have a plan, this is the plan you have, and there's no question whether you're an Upper Peninsula or a Lower Peninsula. So MERS was created really to administer defined benefit pension plans out of a need for growth and to expand offerings to local units of government in Michigan. We separated from the state in 1996 by a legislative act, and that's really when the 9-member board became the governing piece. So a lot of similarities. There's a lot, and we're subject to the same oversight and regulation that the state has, but we are not, like, we don't answer directly to the legislature, to the governor, you know, Senate, the House, et cetera.
So that gives me two quick follow-ups. Are we free to pick some other person or entity to manage our retirements, or is there state law that requires us to use MERS?
No, you are free. The short answer is you are free for both the defined benefit pension plan and any future considerations of alternative type of plans. So MERS, this is MERS core focus. As you mentioned, you know, as a not-for-profit, so it's, you know, sort of one of the oldest shared services stories, you know, in the state, having existed for well over 70 years now. But no, you are not bound. There is not a state mandate. So MERS has about 85% of the state of Michigan, but obviously not, you know, not everybody.
Okay, thanks. That.
Your Honor,
Yeah, absolutely. Karen.
would we like to just time budget, you've got a lot of content in here, and just to make sure that we spend maybe at least the last half just on the options that you've laid out?
Yeah.
So if I just put that out there in case, so if we get to the extent where our questions are too much, maybe you can tell us to hold off. How's that?
Yeah, no, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And I won't, knowing that we have the time, and I appreciate the time that you give me, because gosh, there's so much. So I'll just highlight a couple things for your late night reading pleasure here this evening or tomorrow. So page 3, I wanted to give council pages 3 and really page 4 is just an overview, a sort of a generic example, if you will, of how does the defined benefit work from a participant's standpoint. So taking a generic example of a general employee at the city of Grand Haven, calculating his or her benefit. And at the highest level, I will just say that at the top of page 3, in a defined benefit pension plan like the city has, there's a 3-part formula, and that's shown, Ashley, if you can show the top of page 3. Sorry, I'm jumping all over on you here. That red box there are the 3 core component pieces that determine what any individual gets out of the plan. So the city has a variety of different divisions or classifications of employees, different details of its pension plan, but at the end of the day, this final average compensation times the service credit, which is your years and months working for the city, times a benefit multiplier, you multiply those pieces together, that gives you your annual benefit. So there's more details about the, you know, generically speaking, and to give you a feel for multipliers and things like that, but that's the intent there. So it's very straightforward. Basically, the more you work, the better your benefit gets, the more service credit you earn, the more you work, and the higher your wages are, the better your pension benefit becomes in the most straightforward manner possible. So it's not, a defined benefit plan is not affected by investment market returns or changes in the, you know, in the global economy. Just you work more, you make more money, your pension gets better. That's not to say that the plan is not affected by those things. It absolutely is. But from a participant standpoint, it's based on that 3-part formula. So I won't belabor that point. Hopefully, you know, how the benefit works and what an example might be is what's on page 4. Moving to page 5, again, just at a high level, this is data that I've taken from the city's what we call annual actuarial valuation, which is an analysis that's done for the entire city, for all of our customers, by our consultants, Gabriel Roeder Smith, provides a wealth of information every year. But this table in particular, I just wanted to give you a feel for, you know, how many folks are we talking about here that are in this plan in terms of active employees, vested former folks, vested former employees. Those are people who worked for the city or Board of Light and Power. They're included in this at the time that the data was captured. They've worked enough time to be vested. They just haven't, they're not old enough to start drawing their benefit yet. And then we've got a number of retirees or beneficiaries of a former city or Board of Light and Power retiree in there as well. So you can see those numbers from 2019 to 2020. Just wanted to give you a feel for, you know, the people in the plan in terms of numbers.
Can you explain what pending refunds means, just as a population?
Sure. So there's a 66.5 number there for pending refunds. That number represents individuals who have worked again for the city or Board of Light and Power again at the time. This is all data as of December 31st, 2020. So those folks are people who have worked. They have not earned enough time to be vested yet, but they've made employee contributions to the defined benefit plan, and those are on file as of December 31st, 2020. So those 65 individuals have options available to them, one of which could be to take a refund of their contributions because they did not work enough time at the city to become vested. But there are options available to them depending on where life takes them after their employment with City of Grand Haven.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, try to keep this high level. At page 6, just talks about contributions going into the plan. And as I'm sure you're familiar in conversations with the administration here, the plan is funded by both employees and the city. It all gets sent over to MERS. Our investment team invests the city's funds along with about 85% of the rest of the state in a huge portfolio that MERS calls the Total Market Fund. It's a globally diversified fund that is designed for long-term returns, and it gives our team some pretty significant economies of scale given the size of our portfolio. We have a lot of investment clout. This table, Table 5, is taken from your annual valuation report. It is not an all-inclusive report. It's just the last 11 years, so since 2010. But I just wanted to share with council sort of the money in, money out. So from left to right, you're looking at how much the city has put in under required employer contributions. You can see additional contributions in that third column from the left. Those are contributions that were made by Board of Light and Power. Again, they're included in these totals given the snapshot of time. They will not be included in the report that you'll get for 2021. You can see employee contributions. You can see what investment income being a part of the MERS pool has brought to the table each year. You can see benefit payments, so that's money going out to those retirees and their beneficiaries. Refunds, that's folks that, they didn't work long enough to be vested, they've taken their money back. And then an ending asset balance. So you can see the growth of the plan in terms of money being paid out. And it also really illustrates, from my perspective, the power of the investment earnings, that plays a critical role in, getting assets into this plan. Again, to keep it moving, I'll go over to page 7. With any defined benefit plan, I love the scales analogy. There's a promise made by the city at the highest level. If an employee comes to work, regardless of the classification that he or she comes to work for the city in, if you work enough time, you're promised this lifetime benefit. The lifetime benefit represents a liability, so you see that on the right-hand side of the scale. And then to offset that liability, to fulfill that liability or promise, we get assets into the plan. And that's the left-hand side of the scale. And so all defined benefit plans operate on this sort of scales analogy. It's not unique to MERS. The goal with any pension plan is to have your scales in balance. You are equal, you are 100% funded, or you are fully funded. So that's our goal. Scrolling a little lower here, this is a detailed breakdown of the city's classifications, again, including Board of Light and Power at that time. Actually, if you scroll a little bit more to the right, or that works too, you can see that each division, because it's a unique group of employees, a unique demographic group with unique plan provisions, each division has its own funded level, and then there is a bottom line sort of, end of line funded level for the entire city, which is just north of 73% funded. Another way to look at 73% funded is that as of this moment in time, December 31st, 2020, for every dollar that's promised collectively to everybody at the City of Grand Haven, whether you're a retiree or your employee who started in their 20s and is anticipated to retire decades down the line, there is 73.6 cents in the account as of that moment in time to pay all those folks. So you would think like, well, hey, we want to be at 100%, that's of course where we want to be. We want assets to be equal to the liability. And a lot of plans, including the cities, are not in a state of balance. They're in what we call an underfunded situation. And that's what leads us to, conversations like we're having here today.
Mike, before you move on,
Yeah.
looking at page 6 and then looking at the percent funded here on page 7, if I did the math, we have $10 million of additional employer contributions by the BLP to their plans between 2017 and 2020, roughly 10 million, right?
Yes.
And then if I look at that 73%, I can't do the math that quickly, but I'm guessing that just based on the percent funded, that the BLP is funded at 87, 88%, and we, the remaining city accounts, are closer to, what, 64%? Something like that, which this is as of December 31st, 2020 data,
Yes.
right? Okay.
You are correct on all accounts.
Okay.
Bottom line there, will the numbers will always change. In a defined benefit plan, they always change. We just took a snapshot at the end of December 31st, 3 days ago.
Right.
And we'll work on compiling that data. But yes, with the removal of Board of Light and Power, their assets and their liabilities into their own entity unto themselves, that absolutely will have an impact on the remaining city divisions. And they will be less funded than the 73.3.
Okay. And as we approach 60, is there anything that, when we get to 60% or under, that this council should be concerned about relative to state law?
Yeah,
And-
also great question. Yes, but not to paint an overly concerned situation. In 2017, the state legislature passed an act, I can't remember the technical term, the title, full title, but it's Public Act 202, Protecting Local Government Retirement and Healthcare Reform Act, I think, close. That is an oversight law by the state of Michigan for all local units of government of all shapes and sizes. There is concern about the unfunded liabilities that are out there, promises that have been made that haven't been fully paid for. In terms of both pensions, like the city has, like we're talking here, and also for retiree health care, so health insurance in retirement. Specifically for pensions, the state has determined in this law that if you are at or below 60.0% funded, you are on a watch list. That's my term for it. I don't think they actually have a term, but if you're at 60%, everybody has to tell their story to the state every single year. This is how well funded we're at. This is the direction we're moving in. If we're at or below 60, we have to tell more to the state. Like, okay, well, what are we doing to move ourselves into a fully funded position? And there's a variety of different actions that can be taken to move in that level. Being below 60 doesn't mean that there are actually any financial penalties, but you do need to take more ownership of the situation. And the law was designed to raise awareness and create action so that you move yourself in a positive position over time. It's not going to happen overnight, but it is very much designed to create awareness. So thankfully you are above that level, but with the removal of those assets, it will be closer than what it is in this report here,
Thank you.
if that helps.
I got, Mark, one quick one then.
Sure.
The actuarial forecasts upon which these assumptions are made, are those yours or are those state? Is there somebody at the state that makes those, or are those?
Yeah, Mayor, great question.
You
Yes, yes to both of those. So for purposes of the contribution requirements that the city gets, I mentioned that you get this annual actuarial valuation. MERS has its actuarial consultants, GRS. MERS and our elected board determine what all of our assumptions are: investment rate of return, life expectancy, pay increases, things like that. So we set our own assumptions for our statewide system. On top of that, the state of Michigan, through this Public Act 202 that I just mentioned, also sets assumptions for all defined benefit plans that everybody has to share their numbers using those assumptions as well. So MERS and the state are very, very close, but they are not exactly the same.
Okay, if
So
they're very, very close, I'm good.
So the numbers are a little different with the state. The state can change theirs, they share them with us and everybody. The goal is for the state to be able to do the best apples to apples comparison that they can, knowing that if you take the city of Grand Rapids, which runs their own plan, city of Grand Haven, a part of MERS. Very similar, but somewhat different assumptions, and they're trying to remove one of the variables off the table, knowing that, of course, the men and women in the plan, the money in the plan, the provisions in the plan will always be different. Oh, there's so much more I could go on, but I'll stop there. So So, Ashley, if you don't mind going to page 8, just quickly, again, just reiterating, the goal for the plan is assets and liabilities to be in balance. And there's just a couple lines below that that I wanted to share with you. Just a couple key bullet points, again, without going into all the details. The MERS board that I mentioned to you in the beginning, the 9-member board, they take on what is called the fiduciary responsibility for every single member that's in the MERS system. So what is that? It's basically the caretaker responsibility to ensure, frankly, that assets that are in the plan are there to pay for promised benefits. And so one of the key responsibilities of the board is looking at the assumptions that are used, making changes to the methodologies, the way the calculations are done, staying current with what's going on, requirements at the state level, at the federal GASB level, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, making sure that all rules and regulations are followed. And a key piece of this is ensuring that over time, any unfunded liabilities, any debt, if you will, that is owed is resolved. And there's a process, and you'll see that when we see the reports, there's a process to move the plan if it's out of balance, if liabilities weigh more than the assets, to bring the scales back into balance. So that's a very high level to specifically what the bold third bullet point is showing there. There is a path, and again, you'll see that if you've, or you may have seen it already if you've looked at some of the analyses that our actuaries put together. So there is a process, but it is a long-term process. It does not shift, 1 or 2 or 3 years. Just again, for context, on page 9, at 73.3% at the end of 2020, where does that stack the city up in terms of the peers in the MERS system? That puts you in, it's sort of a bell curve on its side. So the city is one of 161 other local units of government that fall in that 70 to 79% range. The 18 number that you see there, that's the time frame needed to bring the scales back in balance through this amortization process that I just mentioned a moment ago. And then the 81% just references the number of MERS total customers that have taken some kind of action to move that process up, sort of expedite that process. So I wanted to mention that. And then the last piece just here at the bottom, a unique thing about MERS, while it's specifically focused on the state of Michigan, we are a not-for-profit. MERS pools all of the assets in all of our programs for investment purposes, giving significant economies of scale. But at the end of the day, the city of Grand Haven's liabilities and its assets are unique to the city of Grand Haven. We do not share your assets with Muskegon County, Muskegon Township, City of Muskegon, or anybody else that's in MERS. They have their assets, they have their liabilities. Each community stands on its own, so there is no borrowing. So that's sometimes can be a nice, nice peace of mind. It's a statewide system with individual trusts for each customer that's in MERS.
Mayor, may I ask a quick question?
Oh, absolutely, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Sorry,
Ryan.
No, it's okay. Just on that now it's 18 years to eliminate that legacy unfunded liability. So why was 2040 chosen as the magical year, and how much can we really rely on that being the end point?
Yeah, great question. So I've been around long enough that there has absolutely been an evolution in terms of how pension plan funding has been approached. So back when I started in 2005, the policies of today were not in effect, is probably the easiest way to say it. There was always the belief that as a local unit of government, you're never going to run out of money. If you need more money, you raise taxes. And I don't say that flippantly, I don't. That was literally the prevailing thought. You're always going to be there. You're always going to have this revenue source. You can't go bankrupt. It's just you'll exist, and there are no worries. And then you also look at what investment returns were like, especially in the mid to late 90s. Things were good. They were really good. Things don't always stay that way. So then you had the Detroit bankruptcy. You've had other impacts. You've had more oversight from the federal government. The Public Act 202 at the state level have all sort of come together and said, and this again, not to sound funny, my gosh, if we have a debt, we should probably pay that off and not just continually pay things into the future with no end in sight. So there was a change, an actuarial change at a federal level. And MERS, again, following along with that as part of the board's fiduciary responsibility, made this change and said, okay, we have to eliminate all legacy debt by that point in time. So here's the very important caveat with that, and I want to be as, as transparent with council as possible. If, and this is an important if, in 2040, will all of the liabilities be paid off? Yes, if everything that the actuaries assume comes true. And this is not in disrespect to any actuary. It will not exactly come true. That's just, fact. It may be better than what is assumed, or experience may not be as good as what is assumed. But if it is, at some point, to do a calculation, you have to say, well, we assume this, this, and this, and we hope that these assumptions, based on past analysis and peer review, that these assumptions are reasonable. If that is the case, and we assume all of this, then this is true. But experience will always differ. So what can I say with a very high degree of confidence? That in 2040, 2039, 2041, the plan will be significantly better funded than what it is right now, way better funded what it is. Will it be exactly 100.0%? Highly likely not. It could be higher funded than that point, or it could be somewhat below that, and I'm talking, 5-6% low, but very close, like a sort of a range at that point, if that helps. So it's defined benefit is very much a moving number.
So,
And if that,
what,
yep,
I'm
sure.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
So what I'm understanding you to say is that 2040, I guess I assumed 2040 was a year our council picked based on how much pain we could absorb in trying to pay down the pension liability, but 2040 is something the federal government set for us,
So 2040 is actually set by the MERS board.
by the MERS board.
Yep, so there are different, what we call amortization or payoff periods, if you will. Different plans have different periods. Some folks are on a much more accelerated path. Some have asked for more time. That's an option that's actually on the table for Grand Haven as well. So we're looking at 18 years, 2040. Sometimes when we look at cost projections, you say, hey, we need 5 more years, so can we extend that out? So that's an option as well.
And the theory is if we got to 2040 and we were, let's just say we were 100% funded, as the assumption is.
Yes.
At that point going forward, our employees would pay in 5% and we would pay in 5% and we would all be happy? Or some version of that?
Yes, with the
Is that
way.
what fully funded would look like? That's what
Yeah,
I'm asking.
there's a 50-50 cost share right now. So again, the cost per employee, differs a little bit, but there's a 50-50 split. I've actually got a little later in the document there, but it would be a little higher than 5, I think, but there is a split. And that's the goal. That is the goal, and I'm waiting for that day.
Mike, but would it be fair to say this is why we're having this discussion tonight? It's just the inherent risk in defined benefit, the moving target of a defined benefit program makes a lot of people uneasy, employee and employers alike, because we can't, it's constantly moving. We can't guarantee, but with a defined contribution program, we can mitigate that risk. And we know, because it's based on what we put in as opposed to a theoretical calculation of what has to be there.
Yeah, that's a great summary. With defined contribution to 401k type plan, you're saying how much money you're going to put in, and what the individual gets out is variable, based on how investment returns are, how long they work, how much money they get in, those type of things. But for the city, there is no variability unless you change it of your own choice. Defined benefit, you're promising what the individual gets out
Which
for a
we can't know.
lifetime, frankly, without knowing what a lifetime is. And it could be really long, it could be really short. So there's risk. Now, the way the city has set up its cost sharing, 50-50, when plan costs go up, employees feel that impact as well. So, and there does get to be a point, I would argue, if I was a city employee, like, yikes, that's a lot of money, coming. It's a great benefit. The city has a fantastic benefit, even with some of the changes that have been made compared to peers in the greater West Michigan area. it's not cheap, as you know. So yeah, and the variable nature of it is how it works, and there's great peace of mind with this plan that you cannot outlive it. But you also have to be able to afford it, and it has to be able to fit in your budget. You know, it has to work with your recruitment and retention philosophy long-term as well. So hopefully that adds a little to what you were saying there.
Thank you.
And again, just for additional color, and then okay, so I see it's at 7. The last piece I'll push it, page 10 here, is what is it that the actuaries do? So I mentioned every year, actually all of our defined benefit customers get this, what we call an annual actuarial valuation. It's a deep dive analysis for every single division or classification that the city has, and the actuaries look at each division of the city. So, you know, what's the specific demographic makeup of that group? What are their plan provisions? How much money is in there? And then they make a whole series of assumptions about what they expect to happen today and in the future. So how much is the money that's currently in there going to grow? When the individuals, the men and women in there, when they reach retirement age, are they going to retire on day one? If they can go at, you know, age 55, maybe with, you know, 25 years of service, or if they get to age 60, some people will walk out the door day one, but not everybody will. So they make assumptions about it based on what they've seen in the past and what they expect to happen going forward. When will people start drawing their pension benefit? A big one, how long are people going to live? Life expectancies generally have continued to trend up. That's good for all of us, you know, from a life standpoint. But if you're promised a lifetime benefit, even another year of life in a pension plan, that's another year of payments times however many folks are retired, and that can have a pretty significant impact on the plan as well. So there's a whole series of assumptions, both economic, related to the dollars in the plan, and then demographic, related to the people in the plan, what we expect to happen to both of those major categories. And those are reviewed at least every 5 years, if not on a more frequent basis as well. And in the past 5 years, we've seen a more frequent review, and in some cases, changes to some of those because of federal changes, state oversight, actuarial best practices, just the outlook for the future, concern about the outlook for the future. So I've seen a shift in my time accelerated really in the last 10 years, becoming more conservative than we've ever been before. And that's not unique to MERS, that's the state of Michigan and Grand Rapids and Kent County. They're all moving in that same way. So that's actuary work in a nutshell. Because I know there'll be more questions, and I've got more detail on sort of the background, but since we're right at 7, is it okay to go to the options at this point? And I'm glad to come back. And I apologize, I just maybe got a little overzealous with putting too much content here, but I can say again, from working with the city since I started in 2005, you know, the city has been fantastic to work with, and the city has a great benefit. And I've seen the changes, I've seen the impacts that some changes that MERS has made, I've seen some changes that investments have made, and you know, how that has impacted the plan, and I've seen the changes that the city has made on its plan, you know, in that course of time as well, which really leads us, you know, great team that you have here, that you've had in the past, that you have here currently, lots of great open dialogue and, you know, just open-mindedness and deep diving into things. And that's really what led us to this and that actuarial analysis. So on page 14, there is a quick summary, or I'm sorry, page 15, or 14 is the high-level summary. Page 15 is just Cliff's Notes version of it. Maybe it might be a little redundant, but it's what are the options that we are looking at. So again, the source of truth is the Gabriel Roeder-Smith second document that I gave you. That's the full-blown report. I just wanted to break this down maybe a little easier for you. So what we tasked our actuaries to do was to take a look at each of the three city divisions, Division 1, Division 11. So general employees, DPW, SEIU is Division 11, and Division 21, Public Safety. Those are the divisions at the city that are still accepting new hires into the defined benefit plan. And so we ran a projection of, okay, well, what if we leave the plan as it is right now? So that's what we'll call the baseline. And then option 1 was, what if we close the defined benefit plan Everybody that's in the defined benefit plan keeps it, but new hires have a defined contribution. And we remodeled this effective July 1, 2022, but this action could be taken at any point in time. It just needs to be on the first of a month. It also has to be agreed with, with unions through collective bargaining where applicable, of course. Option two, and we can go into these we will go into these in much more detail. Option two is what we call freezing the defined benefit plan. So that's ceasing accrual for all of the current employees of the city of Grand Haven. And then on July 1, 2022, everybody is a participant in the defined contribution plan. And then if you hired me in August, I'd come in as a defined contribution employee. So we're freezing it. We're not going to accrue service in the future. We're going to freeze it at this point in time and move forward in defined contribution. And then option three is everybody's in defined benefit, and then everyone has the option to convert from defined benefit to defined contribution. And I'll give you the details when we get to that one there, but so there's defined contribution for new hires, freezing the defined benefit, or having everyone convert at their individual choice to defined contribution. And I stress the individual choice piece because it's not a mandate that can be forced on them.
So it's basically a combination, it's all of the above. They can migrate, option to convert, or they can
continue on as they see fit.
Right.
Yeah, yes.
But when you say an option to convert, it's not an option to stay on defined benefit throughout. Is it?
So Mayor, under option three, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, so under that one, we would close the defined benefit, say everybody in this room was defined benefit. We close the doors, hey guys, we all have defined benefit. Then we're gonna put this offer on the table that applies to each man and woman in the plan. And you get a number provided to you based on how much time, the value of your pension benefit that you've earned at the city, however long you've been here. So we're all gonna have a different number. The actuaries call this present value of accrued benefits, but it's a lump sum dollar amount.
Right.
And so, for me, they could say, hey, Mike, your value, I'm making this up, your value's $1,000, but Zach's $500, based on the time that we've given here. So then I make an individual choice, Zach's family makes an individual choice, and I say, I'd rather have defined contribution. I want to opt out of defined benefit. I'm going to take my $1,000 in my example, and I'm going to become a participant like the new hires in defined contribution. But for Zach's family, he says, no, I really like what defined benefit brings. He has his reasons, I have mine. He elects to stay with defined benefit. But then you hire somebody new, that person comes in defined contribution. So you've drawn the line in the sand. You've said no more defined benefit folks. You're just allowing some people to opt out if they want to do that, if that helps.
Okay.
Oh.
I understand what you're saying. I guess I thought it was a combination of the frozen plan and.
I did too.
Yeah,
I was
that's the
confused.
way
I
it was
thought,
described to me.
what I thought it was, I thought you were saying it, that you, the option isn't to just continue on and accrue service in the defined benefit, but it's basically number two, they freeze it and they're enrolled,
Correct.
and then they're enrolled in the defined contribution for all future service, or you convert everything over into the plan. Is that not it?
That's what I thought it said. I would agree with Karen on this. But it may not be right, so that would be good.
And we don't have to know the answer right now, but we will later, so
Okay.
we can check on it. I just want to make
Yeah,
sure we understand that.
I'll confirm with you, and I apologize for the confusion. I was on a different page, like I had option two as the freeze option, and then option three was the conversion option, but, excuse me again, absent of a freeze.
Okay.
It's not that couldn't be run, though. I said, so that is, that it would be another option if we.
And you said in the detailed report, it would have the assumptions on that, because you've modeled this, but then it's based on how many people would migrate depending on what that choice was.
Yes,
And-
and that's the key thing with option three, and it's a very important disclaimer, if you will. This models everybody going over to it, which is,
Oh, okay.
in my experience, highly unlikely. usually if conversion is, what I see the most in my travels and in my time at MERS is if a plan change is considered, like is being considered here, it's an option one. It's new hires, and it's not to say that tweaks and changes couldn't be made to the defined benefit plan, and tweaks and changes have actually been made to the, to the existing defined benefit plan already. But vast majority of time, it's new hires that have that impact. The conversion option, Ottawa County did this 10 years ago. And this, I mean, it's public domain information. They said, hey, we're going to define contribution for new hires. And if your existing defined benefit, which they were, you had the choice to opt out and go into DC and take this lump sum jumpstart initial contribution to your DC plan. I think they had about 8% people, which was sort of high. Usually it's like 1 or 2 or 3%.
They had 8%?
Yeah, like less than 10.
Yep,
I've just seen different, and I don't know if this is sort of a state requirement. In the private sector, what I have seen is more of the conversion for populations, especially those that haven't vested, yet, but those that are close to the retirement, having more of that choice, if you will. But
Sort of
I-
tiers here.
yes, actually tiers, depending on years of service, but again, I don't know, and I don't really know what our employees want and everything. I'm just just trying to dig in here into what you've modeled here and make sure we understand what we're looking at.
Right, no, I get it, and without, again, going down that path, similarities, yeah, and then also a lot of differences between the public and private sector, and the biggest piece with public sector, frankly, is the Michigan State Constitution, and there's language in the Michigan State Constitution which protects, and I can't quote the exact phrase, but basically protects against diminishment of an accrued benefit. So it can't be, if you elect or say, I make a choice to have a plan change, like if I elect to convert, okay, you can do that because that's an individual choice. But if for the entire group, you couldn't have a union say, everybody's gonna do this, we're all gonna force your DB plan to cash out and go to a defined contribution plan. The Constitution protects against that, but it does empower the individual to make a decision on behalf of their own unique family situations, which is different than like with General Motors when they closed their pension plan, after in 2007, 2008, or whenever that was, the financial crisis. So there are some differences there. Let me jump into that if that helps a little bit. Now I'll just page 16, just food for thought on the defined benefit plan. There is no perfect plan. There is not. Both plans, defined benefit and defined contribution, they can be very, very good plans and each bring different strengths to the table. I won't go through all of those things here. We sort of talked about it earlier. There's a lot of peace of mind with the defined benefit plan from the participant standpoint because you cannot outlive that benefit. And that's hard to put a price tag on that. But looking at from the risk standpoint, there's risk associated with the defined benefit plan for the city. Costs are variable every single year, and that alone could be reason to make a pivot to another plan option. So those are just, some things, food for thought on the defined benefit, but specifically for the options that our actuaries calculated based on the city's wishes, starting on page 17, and I was getting a little ahead of myself here already. So this is the closed defined benefit. If you've got defined benefit, you keep it. You keep it for the rest of your time working for the city. And then you're anticipated that you're going to retire and you're going to get a pension benefit if you have DB. But then as of July 1, 2022, if you're hired by the city, and again, this has to be, collectively bargained with union groups, you would have defined contribution. The model that we use was a 5% contribution from the city. And we're just looking at city's costs, but bigger picture, we were looking at 5% from the city, 5% from the individual. That is not set in stone. That could be whatever is agreed to through collective bargaining or council's desire. So that was the number that we picked for modeling purposes. So.
And did you pick it because it was typical for us, some of the municipalities here in Michigan, approximately, our size, or?
Yeah, we threw out a number of different options, for that. 5 to 10 runs in the range of typical employer contributions that I'll see in West Michigan for defined contribution plans. I've got outliers, of course, some really low ones, which aren't really that great, and some really, really high-level contributions by some West Michigan communities that are well above 10, approaching 20. But each community is different. I mean, there's some really, but the general range is going to fall from like 5 to 9, 10 in that area. So we wanted to just pick, something that seemed reasonable, and that was the number, but we could always update things too. So again, this doesn't mean that you're locked in at 5. Any number could be chosen, but a higher number, of course, changes the numbers, and a lower number also impacts the numbers as well. Like before, there's advantages and considerations with defined contribution. There's always risk in any pension plan. It's what entity has that risk. And then I'd also want to point out that the trend lines here, just sort of backing up my earlier statement, actually, if you could scroll up just a shade more, or down, I'm sorry, telling you the wrong direction. There's those little bar graphs, if you can read that there. Those are the number of divisions in MERS on an annual basis. And it's not an all-inclusive number. It's just for the last 5 years, and we've been tracking this longer than that. But the number of divisions that have closed defined benefit and implemented defined contribution for new hires. So there were 35 divisions in 2021 through the end of November that took that action. You can see 81 the year before. Perspective-wise, MERS has over 2,500 divisions. So is it a trend? Are things happening like that out there? Absolutely. Is it every single person out there? No, it is not. But there's a lot of different actions, like some of the options that we're discussing here today, that can be deployed, depending on the circumstances. So I just wanted to again sort of share those trend lines. So that's option 1. Option 2, again, is that, actually I should just get right to the numbers. Option 2 is the freeze. Ashley's ahead of me. Again, this is freezing the defined benefit, and then everybody, existing employees and all future employees, are participants in defined contribution in this scenario as of July 1, 2022, with a 5% contribution from the city. So there, again, different impacts on the city's numbers if you freeze or you just close. So that's what we'll see that in just a second. Actually, if you can scroll down just a little bit more, there's the numbers on freeze also through the end of November 2021. Freeze, because it changes the plan for everybody, including the active employees, you see a much lower adoption rate of those type of scenarios. So again, over 2,500 divisions. We've had 2 through the end of November 2021 that have done that, but there are circumstances and situations where it does make sense. And we got feedback from our customers, and someone said, hey, we want to be able to do something like this. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the freeze wasn't an option, and we've sort of evolved to allow that option to happen as well. So again, just wanted to give you a feel for how that option is being taken. And then last but not least, there's this conversion option. I don't have any colorful graphs to show with this, but this again is assuming that everybody in defined benefit, whether they've been here and they're vested, or they just started, last year or sometime, before that, they take the value of their DB plan and they get this cash value number, and they opt out of DB, and they become a DC participant. The numbers that you see up there, the various 3 percentages based on the division, are the funding levels of those particular divisions that they would convert at. And there's a lot of detail behind those numbers, but just so that you have it, if the value of my pension was $1,000, and I'm a general employee in Division 1, and I convert at the funded level of that division, I would get $714 for my $1,000 value of my benefit. So the numbers are different based on the funding levels of those divisions. So there's an option to give more, so that's the baseline. So for general employees, you couldn't go below 71.4, but you can absolutely go above 71.4, not to exceed 100.0%. So this is just run at the baseline level that conversion would take place. I wrote there, no trend data available. Again, it's a small, conversions are offered sometimes. When they're usually not heavily signed onto. But for some individuals, it absolutely makes sense and can be very appealing. Again, it just really depends on the individual's financial circumstances where they're at. So let me get into the numbers here, again, to be respectful of your time. So the page numbers change here because I lifted these documents right out of our actuary's report. So I apologize that it's not completely consistent. What you have here are two charts for each of the three divisions, 1, 11, and 21. The first chart is a projection of funded levels under each of these four scenarios: the baseline, the closed DB, the freeze, and the conversion. And so this is a long-term bird's eye view. You can see the different colors. I tried to keep the color coding consistent throughout my handout for you. Basically, you can see that the funding level is going to go up towards 100%. And that was that discussion we had a few moments ago. If all the assumptions are met and the assumptions are reviewed and based in reality, the plan will move towards a fully funded position. Whether it remains under the baseline scenario as is, or one of these other changes. So it all gets there one way or the other. The question then again is how quickly. In some scenarios it's quicker, and at what cost. So the first chart in all three, for all three divisions, is a funding level projection long-term. And then Ashley, if you don't mind going to the next page, and there's a 10-year detail there that you can see. Then on this next graph, this is also for Division 1, same four scenarios, but this is the city contribution towards the cost in each of those different options. So important consideration here for all of these cost contribution graphs. When the actuaries modeled this information, we used a 17.0% employee contribution rate. I mentioned earlier that there's a cost share with employees in the city of Grand Haven. It's a 50-50 split of the cost of the defined benefit plan up to this cap of 17%. So in all cases, we're at this cap, basically. So we ran it with 17. It was virtually impossible to run the split every single year on a projection and get the numbers to even look somewhat coherent. So I want to stress that under the solid blue line, where you see is the baseline, the as-is scenario, you'll note that contributions are expected to go up in the future, and part of that is a function of anticipated wage increases in the future. So, hopefully 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, wages are higher than what they are today. But you'll see the blue line drops right down to 0. The reason for that is when we get to that year 2040, we're anticipated to be fully funded. And I can't remember exactly who asked earlier, but the ideal scenario in the future at 2040, if we have a 50-50 cost split, employees aren't going to be paying 17% towards the cost of their plan. They're going to be paying half of whatever the cost is at that time. And I do have a slide up there that will show what that's anticipated to be. So the takeaway for me from all of these slides is that one way or the other, whether an action is taken to stay the course, or option 1, option 2, or option 3 are elected, or even an alternative option, if there's a legacy debt, if there's an unfunded liability, it still has to get resolved. It still has to get resolved over a time frame. That time frame is presently set 18 years, the year 2040. So that's why you see all these numbers track in that direction, and then they drop off. But when you look at that, especially for that division, you say, well, gosh, there's no required contribution in 2040. That's because we're setting the employee contribution fixed at a 17% number, and that exceeds the cost of the defined benefit plan at that time. So I don't want to misrepresent the numbers, but there wasn't a good way to show the numbers there. So I wanted to share that with you. So the next two slides, so this is for Division 11, Public Works, SEIU. Same 4 scenarios. Again, you can see, sort of how things are tracking out into the future, with the 2040 date as sort of the target. In some scenarios, it takes a little longer to get that bump near the end, and some get us there, right. There's a higher increase in funding level a little bit sooner. For me, the biggest value of all of these graphs is, looking at this and knowing that, okay, there is this target date, and weighing these options with the city's philosophy, towards recruitment and retention. It's really it's a balancing act, to be honest. There's not a perfect, number to land on, but that's really the key piece here. Now, if you look at the next slide here for Division 11 on the next page, you see a little bit more spread in terms of the contributions. Same caveat that I mentioned on the first. The blue, the baseline, the as-is scenario, it drops all the way down because the employee contribution is fixed at 17%. And in 2040, 17% is expected to exceed the total cost of the defined benefit plan because the legacy debt is gone. But under the different scenarios, the dashed red, which is option 1, which is closing the defined benefit plan, that shows as a little bit more expensive. We still have folks in defined benefit, we're still paying for them, and then as those folks retire, and we only make assumptions about when folks will retire, and then they're equally replaced in defined contribution, then we're going to be contributing 5%, for those folks. This is where that 5% becomes critical to the whole analysis, from the standpoint that this is, again, modeled with 5% from the city. If we did 10% from the city, that pushes that line 1, or the red line, option 1 is going to go higher than that, because we're contributing a greater percentage of the employee payroll. Something, incrementally higher than that's going to be a little incrementally higher than that. So the numbers change, of course, based on what is contributed to DC combined with the DB. We're trying to, show everything all together. The last one that looks a little different here is, this is your public safety division. Again, tracking to full funded in 2040, regardless of the option. But then if you take a look at the second to the last sheet in my document here, which is the contributions, you see a bigger spread here. And Zach had asked me this question as well, saying, gosh, there's quite a difference here. And just, again, at a high level here for Division 21, it's a smaller group of employees compared to the general and the SEIU. So we're at about a 1-to-1 ratio with active employees and retirees. Higher benefit level, significant amount of unfunded liability associated in that division. So if we froze that plan, which is the green line option 2, you're ceasing accrual at a very high benefit level as of July 1, 2022 in this scenario. So you see a significant drop there, more so than what you see in some of the other divisions. The option 3, where folks convert from DB to DC, is the lowest cost contribution that you see up there in total. If everybody converts, you no longer have any active employees remaining in the plan whatsoever. You just have retirees. And I mentioned, people-wise, this is a smaller group. We have less than 30 active retirees and around 30 active employees. So we're eliminating all of the liability associated with the active employees in that scenario. When you get rid of the active employee liability, which is not insignificant, and you can see those numbers, the detail in the chart, or the detail below the graphs. That's why there's such a big drop-off, a big drop-off there. Either way, again, they all track towards that 2040. 2040 is that time frame set by the MERS board, when those legacy liabilities are designed to be fulfilled, And that's why you see the drop off, but they all continue on out in the future, because they're still expected to be, depending on the scenario, you might still have some active employees in the plan at 2042, 2043, depending on how the age of the youngest person, that's in the plan. And biggest, highest level picture, any change to the defined benefit plan, the defined benefit plan doesn't truly disappear or go away off the books until that last retiree passes, and there's no longer a person to make a claim on it. So, for instance, the state of Michigan referenced earlier, the state of Michigan moved to defined contribution in 1997. They have significantly more folks in defined contribution than they do in defined benefit, but they have defined benefit employees, and those people will someday retire. They're obviously more experienced employees now, and then they're anticipated to be retired for years, if not decades, so it's.
Can I interrupt for 1 second here?
Sure.
We've run up against the end of our time for the work session.
Yeah.
And I have to close the work session and then open the regular city council meeting. But I'm guessing there may be some other questions. And you may have some more closing remarks. So if you would, could you please take a seat, stick around. We'll call you back up. There's a few procedural niceties we have to take care of before we do that, and then we'll call you back up for continuation of the work session.
Sounds
Is that
good.
acceptable?
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize for us trying to watch that clock.
It's no problem whatsoever. Thank you so much for your help. Do I need a motion to adjourn? Nope, we're gonna adjourn the work session. And anybody need a break?
Okay.
You're good? All right. Find my agenda. January 3rd, 2022, is hereby called to order. Clerk, would you please read the roll?
Councilmember Lowe,
Here.
Councilmember Cummins,
Here?
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Here.
Councilmember Fritz,
Here.
Mayor McNally.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We've got invocation will be delivered this evening by Roger Bergman, Covenant Life Church of Grand Haven, former mayor of City of Grand Haven. Would everyone please rise with me for the invocation and stay rising for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Mayor. Would you join me, please? Heavenly Father, we come before you this evening, first of all, to thank you for this beautiful place that we live and that we call our home, this place of rivers, lakes, parks, and beauty. We also want to pause and give thanks for those who step up to make sure that our community retains that special place that we have and that we call home. Our community is made up of leaders who teach our kids, who run our businesses, provide health care for seniors as well as ourselves, provide care for our infrastructure, as well as providing safety. But we also give thanks for these city council members that are here tonight. It's for these council leaders that we pray especially. In the new year, give them wisdom to make decisions that are best for all of our citizens and for the future of Grand Haven. Finally, we ask for peace in our communities, our country, as well as the world. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I don't think we have either new or reappointments. True? We're going to move to approval of the consent and regular agendas. Can I get a motion for approval of the consent and regular agendas?
I'll make a motion.
Any second? Then Brian, go ahead.
Second.
Discussion? No. I've got something I'd like to say. There's an item on the regular agenda that I introduced. I was wrong when I did it. I offer an apology to the community, and I will explain the situation. I introduced let me see if I can find it. I introduced an proposed ordinance, or proposed resolution to consider the city council voting to send the question of recreational marijuana sale to the voters. And I have been informed by the city attorney that the city council does not have legal authority to do that, that I was in error when I made this proposal, and that in fact there are two ways that laws can be made within the city. The first is the council can pass an ordinance, and the second is that citizen groups can organize to petition for an ordinance or an initiative on the ballot, but that city council does not have authority to send something to the voters for their binding decision. And that being said, I am going to, I think we move forward with the agenda as it's written. Does that bring any further discussion from anyone else?
Mayor, if we're moving forward with that item as on the agenda as written, based on your comments that you just made, are we removing item A from new business?
I would vote to amend the agenda to remove item A from new business. But I'm not sure procedurally how to do that.
I think, yeah, the council could amend Councilman Fritz and I could potentially amend our motion in seconds to approve the regular consent agendas without item A.
12A in new business, right? Or A in
Correct,
new
without
business?
12A, a new business. Is that amendable to you?
Amendable?
Yes, it is.
All right, and I would second that without that item. Only thing I would add, Mayor, I know there's been, some folks who have had expressed an interest in a ballot proposal, and I expressed to them that there's the city attorney opinion indicating our ability to do that is really prohibited. And a lot of them, a few of them responded to me that they felt in the interest of transparency that they would like for us to discuss releasing that opinion by the city attorney. And so I don't know when the proper place would be on the agenda to either add a discussion to release that, or if we simply make that as part of maybe this motion in some way that we release the city attorney's opinion regarding this matter. So that way there's just full, anybody can take a look at it and understand their options, which he did lay out in there as you indicated as well.
I am certainly amenable to that. I don't think there's a particularly privileged aspect to that opinion, so does anybody have a reservation about that?
No, I don't.
Pat?
Would the best way to do that perhaps to be just print it in the minutes, so that it's there, and then we can also make it available to anybody who would like it. We could just send it to them, but we could print it in the minutes at this part of the meeting. Would that be okay, Kelly?
Yeah, I can get them in there.
Yeah, we can just
If
put it in
that's
there.
what everyone wants.
Is that
Yes.
acceptable?
I think it's fine as long as it's clear that any of us are able to share the full written narrative. 'Cause I understand that the snapshot that'll be in the minutes will probably be much shorter than the fuller version, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. You have the snapshot ready? Because there is just a one sentence maybe that would inform the discussion pretty well right now for those people who are watching or here in the audience.
Right.
This was that quick snippet. There is nothing in the charter or in state law that would give the council the option of placing a proposed ordinance on the ballot for consideration by the electors without either a referendum petition or an initiative petition. So that's just part of it, but we'll print the whole opinion in the minutes. But that's kind of the crux of the matter, I think.
Okay, if the full version will be printed in the minutes, and I think that'll be a full release, so.
That'd be good.
All right, so as amended, there's a motion on the floor. Does anybody have any further discussion on it? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Cummins,
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz,
Yes.
Councilmember Lowe,
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
All right, that carries.
At this time, I've got the call to the audience. Members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to call in may dial 616-935-3285. And if it continues ringing, please remain on the line for your turn. We will take all callers tonight. Mr. Hagan, could you state
Yes,
your name, please?
Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. The item I want to talk to is the pension. And as the numbers were being read off, I went through the document, and there's a long-term impact pages. And the numbers on that document for actuarial accrued liability are, in the year 2030, 29.9 million, Division 1, 22.7, Division 11, 49, Division 21, total 101.6 million. And if you've been following the per capita unfunded liability, it's increased dramatically. I worked out that, and in the year 2030, that would be $10,160.
And
Just wanted to make everybody aware, including the audience, that the numbers are escalating extremely rapidly. Even though we say we're going to get there by 2040, it's going to be a big stretch. Thanks.
thank you, Mr. Hagan. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Carolyn Taylor. I live at 15177 Ferris Street, and I'm here tonight to speak to the topic of the potential of recreational marijuana being in our city. I did send an email to all of you this afternoon. I don't know how much time you had to look at much of it, but I did want to repeat a few points of that, and I wanted to show you, this is not in the email. This is a picture of my son, Casey. He's now 18 years old. This was when he was 60 days sober from using marijuana and alcohol. He's from right here in Grand Haven. This didn't last. This was in fall of 2020, and I will share that in 2020 and early 2021, my sweet high school son was in jail 4 times. When you do alcohol and drugs, sometimes you do some stupid things, and I myself had to call the police on him twice to come to our home to get him. And he in 2020 went to Hazelden Betty Ford for treatment, successfully graduated, and these were to be his senior pictures for Grand Haven High School. He did not graduate yet from Grand Haven High School. When everybody was complaining about getting 2 tickets for graduation last year, he was in rehab again in North Carolina. There's not rehab for kids in our community, and that's another issue altogether. And really, even the state of Michigan is terrible at it. But I'm sharing this because the reason he kept going back to jail, he only had to go twice. He went 2 other times because he couldn't maintain not doing marijuana enough to pass a P test at our courthouse. It is addictive. It is a problem. A lot of our youth are using it, and they're not getting the help that they need because there aren't the resources. No matter what, if recreational marijuana comes into our city, there are going to be more kids using it for a variety of reasons. And some of that's in my email, and there's things you can find out about it all over the place. I don't have a problem at all with recreational marijuana done the right way, and I know that our businesses are trying to do it the right way, and I feel pretty strongly that the 2 I'm slightly familiar with will. Quite certain of that. And the medical marijuana, again, there's a place for that, and that's fantastic. But there's also a big thing that we don't like to talk about in our town, and kids really do. A ton of them are using this stuff. A ton of them, I shared at the Planning Commission meeting, aren't graduating high school, or are graduating but just barely, and then not going on to college on full scholarships because they get caught up using the marijuana. My son's quote, and I think I put it in my email, he says that now he's sober again. Hopefully he'll stay sober as long as he doesn't come back to Grand Haven. He said, "You lose everything that used to bring you joy. This includes athletics, many friends, life experiences, and even college scholarships." And it's the truth.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Mike Westbrook, 423 Lafayette Avenue, Grand Haven, Michigan. I am a current board member and vice chair of the Grand Haven Board of Light and Powers Board. And I'd like to request to council that you postpone agenda item 12E until your February city council meeting. Specifically, the agenda item to select HDR, an environmental consultant out of Ann Arbor, to be the environmental consultant of record and authorize city staff to negotiate a service contract for holistic environmental consultation and remediation services. The BLP board and city council have not met collaboratively on this issue since July of 2021. It's time for an update and time for some new board members, new council members to get more information on the subject. The BLP has sent a request to the city council members and to the BLP board to host an open meeting on Thursday, January 13th at 6:00 p.m. This meeting would be an opportunity to update city council, the BLP board members, as well as the general public on environmental compliance activities and associated recommendations that have transpired over the last 6 months. The BLP's current environmental consultant, environmental attorney, as well as Eric Booth, the operations and supply manager from the BLP, will all be present with time for Q&A. This meeting will be a great educational opportunity for both city council, BLP board members, and of course the public. Postponing the agenda item tonight until after all of our new and existing council and board members receive this important information would be beneficial. I thank you for your consideration and look forward to seeing you all on the 13th.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Any other members?
Jay Whitelaw, 104 Poplar. Interesting enough, I wasn't going to say anything, but after hearing Mike, I totally agree that I'd be very interested on that subject. And in fact, I was going to say something tonight at the end about where are we with our thought process. And I think the more that we start to talk about the reality, realizing where you're going on your next step, using that as an opportunity to educate everybody, I think is very important. Thank you, Mike.
Looking to take the phone call, Your Honor?
Yes, please.
Hello, caller. You're on City Council. You have 3 minutes.
Phone call, Your Honor? Yes.
Could you state your... Thanks, Andrea. Go ahead.
It's Andrea Hendricks, I'm also a board member of the BLP. I also, like Mike had said, want to request that you guys take a minute before you approve the environmental consultant to have a conversation with the Board of Light and Power. I know that there's been some challenges getting all of our board members and council members in the same room together. I'm not opposed to the consultant that you are recommending, and in fact, after reviewing some of the information that was provided, I think that they have a skill set that might be very helpful for the city of Grand Haven holistically to make sure that we are not only handling the technical aspects of the contamination on Harbor Island, but also the relational aspects of making sure that our public and the regulatory boards that are asking us to actually clean the island have a good relationship. What I do want to say is I myself have concerns with Jaffe and Golder, and it's not an accusation of their lack of professional capabilities. However, I think that it has more to do with the traditional processes for making sure that our city council has access to information and our board members have access to what these consultants are doing. So I'm hoping that if we hold off on getting an environmental consultant, that this gives Jaffe, Golder, and our staff at the Board of Light and Power the chance to explain exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it, and identify the scope of work that another consultant would be able to bring to the process. I respect the need, considering all of the contamination, for a holistic forward face towards Eagle, and respect the decisions that you're making. And I'm hoping that us working together on this will demonstrate to our regulators and to our community that we're on the same page and are addressing this on a joint front. Thank you.
Good evening, Jamie Cooper, 518 Friant. I am also a part of the 1021 Jackson project that is on the agenda tonight. I wanted to take a moment and just, I'm a solutions-oriented kind of person, and when I hear concerns in the community, I like to think about ways that we can address some of those concerns, especially as a cannabis business that, would like to see adult use passed in Grand Haven. I've had the honor of working in the legal cannabis space for the last 6 years here in Michigan, even though it's, commercial for medical has only been around since about 2017. I was a part of efforts to get it where it is today, and I was a part of a lot of conversations throughout the state of Michigan and helping and working with communities in ordinances and creating something that is fitting to their community. I think the ordinance that we have in place for medical cannabis is very fitting to our community, and I'm very proud to be in this community because of, that and everything that I feel like you have listened, and I appreciate that. I don't think there's anything wrong with addressing someone like Carolyn's concerns and using some of the tax money to create programs that help educate parents and help educate some of the teenagers in our community that we might fear be getting a hold of these products, and helping parents understand the signs of seeing it. I'm a big fan of education, and I think that some of that tax money can use to create a program like that and help address some of these concerns, or even some of these businesses can help put together a program like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Okay. Going to ask for continuation of the work session, and our MERS representative will return if possible.
All right, well, thank you, Council. I appreciate the time extension that you gave me there, and Ashley's already on the last page, so I was close, but I missed
You
my
were,
target.
I could tell you were tailing off, but our timing is
I totally understand. I appreciate the consideration. This last table is something that I referenced earlier, and it's a part of the actuarial study by Graber, Roeder, Smith. Again, it's food for thought, as a lot of the information in the report is. So the purpose of I've highlighted two sets of numbers on this. The yellow set of numbers is called the total normal cost. It's expressed as a percentage, and there's a different number for each of the three divisions that we discussed tonight. The total normal cost represents the cost of 12 months of service for each of the men and women in each of those three different divisions in the defined benefit plan. And so this is a long-term point of view. This is the cost of the plan, just the cost of the plan, regardless of who pays for it, in the situation where there is no unfunded liability. So Division 1's plan is 15, the other one's almost 15, and we're at about almost 21%. That is the cost of the plan for a year of service based on those plan provisions. The red highlight is, again, the proposed 5% contribution amount to the defined contribution plan. And so I call these two out, one to reference back to what we had mentioned earlier and discussed, the total normal cost. There is the cost sharing with City of Grand Haven employees, which basically cuts that total normal cost in half. And now I know that this is not the reality today, and I'm not advocating one proposed option or solution over the other. Just giving a long-term point of view that, for Division 1, and again, this is fast forwarding years down the road, if the plan is in the fully funded position, and I fully recognize there's risk involved in all of the years leading up to that point, and as I had mentioned earlier, it's not guaranteed that we're at that 100% mark at that point in time. We could be higher, we could be lower, but cutting those costs in half between the employee and the city just gives you a feel for where things could be at that particular point in time compared to the DC contribution. So it's the best apples to apples cost comparison that we can make when you compare a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. And again, that's irregardless of freezing the plan or converting or anything like that, just purely looking at things from a cost standpoint. So that was I wanted to mention those things. I think, lastly, I do appreciate council's time. I appreciate the administration's time. I appreciate the relationship that the city has with MERS over all of these decades. It's great to have the discussion and know that you have options. There is a right fit for everyone. They're challenging discussions, circumstances, and decisions that have to be made. Glad to provide more information as needed to council through the appropriate channels as you desire it, to help give you as much information that you need. And then as my follow-up, I will confirm that option 3 is indeed, it does not include a freeze, and I will just double check my math on that, and I'll confirm that by email with Zach and the management team tomorrow morning if that is acceptable by council. So that was everything that I wanted to share with you this evening.
Thank you, Mike. Questions?
One of the questions that just popped up in my mind as you were finishing up was, as you talked about the actuarial assumptions, and we talked about risk and where that risk is right now, and obviously as an employer we're facing a lot of risk. Obviously the recession, Great Recession of 2008 and 2009 had a really significant impact, kind of on the trajectory, and maybe it's perhaps a big reason why we ended up here, on top of some actuarial changes with that. So what's in place now, or if we have we're going along and we're, chipping away at this, and, 5 years from now, there's another Great Recession, and the markets are all thrown off, what's being done to really levelize things, to really make it to where we might not be just right back in a really significant hole again?
Yeah.
and have that risk as an employer?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. At first, I hope that never happens. I hope there's never 2008 again. But a lot of the changes that have taken place with all public sector pension plans, including MERS, what I mentioned earlier, things becoming more conservative than they ever were. Best practices, learning from past experience, whether it's Detroit bankruptcy, other municipal entities across the United States, moving the investment rate of return assumption to something that's more conservative than it was for the previous 60 years. I mean, it was set at one level, it was exceeded, and it was left there. In the last 10 years, there's been 2 changes, and they are not insignificant changes to that investment rate of return. That's recognition of the volatility that's out there. We had a great investment return. I don't have the final numbers yet, but way north of double digits for 2021. But that, of course, in all the disclaimers, doesn't mean that that's where things are going to go in the future. There's concerns about inflation. There's concerns about the Federal Reserve and their impact on the market. So there's concerns out there as well, and there's optimism signs, and no one knows for sure. But out of recognition of those signs, we are seeing a shift in things becoming more and more conservative, and that has accelerated significantly in the last 10 years to move us into a position so that you are in a better prepared position, more conservative defensive position, if you will, should an event like 2008 occur again.
Just, along those lines, that our staff, I understand, and I hear their frustration sometimes when we're increasing these payments towards that magical date that was going to occur, and then the actuarial assumptions keep changing and keep knocking us into a deeper hole, or we're not making any progress like we were anticipating, and that's really frustrating too. And the goalpost keeps changing on us. I understand the reasoning is probably important to do that, but we're just going to keep spinning our wheels here. That's our concern.
Your statement about goalposts is a great analogy, and it's accurate. I mean, I can't tell you that it is not. There has been targets, and the targets have moved. We've been more conservative in what we expect to get from investments. We've expected people to live longer, and those are impactful assumptions, but they're just 2 of a multitude of assumptions. And so, the target continues to shift, and that's it's the nature of the defined benefit plan and being responsible stewards of said plan. It's definitely a challenge, and I will say that our board feels that as well in terms of the decisions that they make in terms of how calculations will be done with the plan and the assumptions that are used.
So Mike, we did do a little benchmarking. I don't know if you're familiar with the Michigan Department of Treasury Community Financial Dashboard.
A little bit,
But
yes.
they do import a lot of this data and use the 2020 financial reports from municipalities. And Grand Haven's pension health is ranked the 13th worst in all of Michigan because of the as measured by unfunded pension liabilities. Grand Haven was higher than Holland, Muskegon in the total amount, Norton Shores, and Zeeland. On an unfunded pension per capita for 2020, Grand Haven was $2,904 per person, Holland $443, Muskegon $807. So the reason why we're taking a step back here is that, we're looking at it, the health by some trusted sources tells us that we can't afford what we have, and so we have to act. We can't wait to act. We are going to have to do something here, and that's why these options give us something to start to discuss. Doing nothing and continuing isn't something that's responsible or affordable for this city because, partly because of what you said. The nature of defined benefit is we will never know. Defined contribution gives us a fixed contribution. Defined benefit is a fixed benefit or in the future that keeps changing. And so we're just not of the size and scale that we can afford that going forward, which is why we're looking at these options.
Yeah,
So you're very helpful, and
completely understand.
I just wanted to give you and some of our community the context for why we're looking at all this.
Mike, first of all, thank you for the presentation. with the employees that are sitting in the audience tonight, you know, they're paying right now, a lot of them are paying 17% of their salaries. And, you know, as Karen said, you know, we have a huge deficit that we have to deal with. So, you know, thanks for the options, but boy, there's a lot of things that we really have to do to help the employees and to help the city. It's not, you know, one or the other. You know, we got a great staff that we work with. We want to keep them there. But boy, 17%. I mean, I'm in a state retirement system in New York, and you know, I mean, it's 17% is just insane. I've just never seen anything like it. So, if there's anything we can do, if there's any other options out there that, you know, I know you showed 3. If there's any other options that you can think of to help us, you know, I would really appreciate it, because it's something that is near and dear to everyone's heart here.
Oh, I understand. I appreciate your comments.
Mike?
I just want to tell them thank you for the information and that, and as the employees are out there listening to you, there's options out there for us to look at, so thank you again.
I have one other question, Mike, which is, if you switched to a defined contribution plan, does MERS continue to manage it?
Yes, we can.
And does it give employees any choice about, like, is there a family of funds they can choose to invest in, or do you make those decisions? How does it work? Is it the equivalent of a 401k, but whatever the public sector version of that is?
It is. It's a 401A,
Okay.
the public sector version of the 401k. Very similar, some differences, of course. A variety of fund options spanning from, you know, conservative to aggressive, including what we call a brokerage window that allows you to be very specific. You know, you want to invest in a stock or gold or something of that nature, along with a variety of resources, an education team. The city has a couple divisions that have a MERS defined contribution plan already. So yeah, a lot of individual empowerment, and it raises the, I would say, necessity for employee education, you know, for a partnership in a defined contribution plan to encourage folks to look at their account, know where they're going, make a plan, make changes, be proactive, and a lot of resources, you know, designed to hopefully get people excited, you know, but get them engaged with that, because the risk is on the individual, and you want to mitigate that as much as you can with informed decisions and information.
Anyone else?
No, thank you very much. Thank you for your partnership, and thank you for all your support and as we go through looking at all this.
Welcome. Thank you again
Thank
for
you,
your
Mike.
time and the extra time.
All right. All right, we moved on to consent agenda. I'm going to have the clerk read the consent agenda. Is that acceptable?
Yep, would you like to have someone make a motion and second to approve it?
Maybe that would be a good idea. Thank you.
So move.
Second?
Okay, I heard moving by McLaughlin, second by Lowe first.
All right.
Sorry.
The items on the consent agenda for tonight are the approval of the city council minutes for the special work session and regular meeting held on December 20th, 2021. The approval of the bills memo in the amount of $715,448.09. The approval of change order 01 for the Robinson Landing Utility Extension to Jackson Murphy Contractors of Muskegon, Michigan, in the not-to-exceed amount of $3,207.69, and to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary documents. And that concludes your consent agenda for tonight.
Any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz?
Yes.
Councilmember Lowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Cummins?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Motion passes. The next item on your agenda is presentations, Mayor.
Looks like the first presentation is Kim Kroll, Executive Director of 4 Points, who's going to give us an overview of 2021.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to come here today and to share all the wonderful things we do at 4 Points. My name is Kim and I am the Executive Director at 4 Points. I also brought with me my leadership team, Kate Laughlin, who's our Social Service Director, and Alex Brown, who's our Wellness Director. Lisa Lucky, who is our Board Chair, is also with us. What we're going to do is go through a PowerPoint presentation that Kate and Alex do to all of our new members to give them a better education of what we do.
All right, so our mission at 4 Points is to promote the vitality, independence, and well-being of older adults in North Ottawa community by providing needed services and information, encouraging recreation and lifelong learning, and advocating for solutions to the issues of aging. So here we have just some pictures of our members pre-COVID, obviously, participating in different activities we have at the Wellness Center. So at 4 Points, we try to incorporate the 4 different 4 points when it comes to our mission. So intellectual, social, physical, and spiritual health. Our philosophy to meet those 4 points is to combine our community living department, our wellness center programming, and our consumer support to help seniors in the community age in place. Our wellness center, which is located in Grand Haven, offers our members different activity opportunities such as fitness classes, different learning opportunities, art classes, social connections, games, trips, and then off-site community events. So here's just a more detailed list of what we have to offer for our members. So as a member of 4 Points, you can participate in any of these activities. We try to have something for everybody. So we have a great book club. We offer different clinics for hearing checks and legal assistance. We do social activities such as games. And then we also partner with other agencies in the community like Michigan State Extension, North Ottawa Hospital to provide educational seminars and support groups.
So our goal with community living is to be person-centered. We meet the older adult where they are and provide services and resources that move them towards their goals, which most often is to age in place and stay at home. We use the millage funds from Grand Haven and the other municipalities that support us to offset those costs of the services we provide so that the goal of aging in place is attainable, not just to those with financial means. So we also offer a number of services to the older adult community at large. Our community support services outlined on the screen are designed to assist with things such as insurance counseling, offset social isolation through telephone reassurance, offer guidance by explaining community resources and options for care, and providing medical equipment and prescriptions and other medical needs not covered by traditional insurance. More pre-COVID, wasn't it fun? And we are strongly supported by volunteers. We couldn't do what we do at 4 Points without the many volunteers we have working with us. These are some of the programs that people help with on a volunteer basis. So tell your friends or yourselves if you're interested.
And then like Kim said, this presentation is typically given to any new members. So these are a few of the frequently asked questions that we receive once people join the center. So what's included in my membership? So we do require a fee to participate in all those fun activities. But our social services, like what Kate was talking about, those are open to the community. So there are age restrictions and sometimes financial restrictions, just depending on what people are looking for. So again, do I need to be a member to receive the social services? The answer is no. Is 4 Points open on holidays? Luckily for our staff, we are not. We are also closed whenever Grand Haven or Spring Lake Public Schools are closed for weather. And then key cards. So all of our members get these fun little key cards. They can scan in for different activities. We replace those when they lose them. And then one of the other great services that we offer in partnership with AgeWell is we do congregate meals. So you do not have to be a member to come in and have a meal. We do soup and salad Monday through Friday, and then hot meals on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's donation based, so if you're over 60 and you can't afford it, just come on in and grab a meal. And then this is really tiny, but in your packets you all received this. These are our accomplishments from 2021. So different things that we did in the community, like with the COVID response. We did a Live In It Expo, so a big week-long event for our community to come check out the center. And then I'll leave this one to Lisa.
Good evening, Lisa Lucky. I'm a board member at 4 Points and chairperson of the board. And I'm just simply here to thank you as Grand Haven City Council, as well as the city staff on behalf of 4 Points. Thank you for your millage support. Thank you for the community support. As we all know, we've been through a challenging pandemic over the past year, and the staff, I want to compliment them. They've done a beautiful job in supporting our most vulnerable population, which is our seniors. And they've continued to stay open and support all of our seniors in the community in providing their necessities and going above and beyond. So thank you, and thank you to our community as well.
Thank you all for the presentation. Has anybody got questions?
No, but I just want to say thank you very much for being in the community and doing what you do. You are just an asset that we really need, and if you know, you get a lot of calls there. I know you do. I have a lot of people that have been contacting me through the years of where to go and what to find out, and I've always steered them toward you because you actually give them the answers they need. As you get older, you need to find someone to talk to, and you're the answer for them to go to. Through the years, my parents and my in-laws and everything, when we get done with our medical needs and that, like the walkers and anything else you need, we always donate them back to you, and it seems to go back out in communities, so that assistance is out there for people that can't afford them. So it's a great thing to do. So I got to say thank you so very much for all that you do for our community.
Same here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, the next presentation is on the City of Grand Haven audit that was conducted by Peter Hefner and Vriedeveld Hefner.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you for coming.
Prior to the audit process, we met with your audit committee, and then subsequent to the audit process, before issuance of the report, we met with your audit committee again and walked through the audit in quite a bit of detail. So tonight I just wanted to touch upon some of the bigger issues and provide you with an opportunity to answer any questions that you may have regarding the audit process. First of all, I want to point out that the financial statements, which I'm hanging onto here, are the responsibility of management, and ultimately the board, it's our responsibility to express an opinion on those financial statements based on our audit. We provided an opinion on the financial statements. The financial statements in total here include management's discussion and analysis in the front of the report. We don't provide an opinion on that information. And subsequent to the notes to the financial statements are required supplementary information, which we do not provide an opinion on. And our opinion talks about the aspects of this document that we are providing an opinion on. This year you actually received 3 opinions. One will be on the financial statements. One is on your system of internal controls over financial reporting, which is that controls over the compilation of this document. And the last opinion is on your compliance with federal grant requirements. The reason you have 3 opinions this year is because you received over $750,000 of federal financial assistance. When that occurs, It requires what is referred to as a single audit, an audit of the financial statements, an audit of your system of internal controls over financial reporting, and an audit over your compliance. The very back of our audit report, or the very back of your audit report, is a summary provided to the federal government of those 3 opinions. And so I'm referring to page 95. And at the top of page 95 of the financial statements, it talks about the type of auditor's report issued on the financial statements, and it says unmodified. That means that we are providing an opinion that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, the aggregate component units, each major fund, as well as the aggregate funds in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And that's the last paragraph on page 1, where our opinion is provided. And the opinion is 2 pages long, so it talks about those areas where we're not auditing things or where we are, but I refer to that as a clean opinion, that you are following the standards as required by the state of Michigan, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, so that's great. On the summary at the back of the report again, there is our some boxes checked, and there is information about the opinion on internal controls over financial reporting. There were no material weaknesses in the system of internal controls over financial reporting identified, no significant deficiencies. Again, that's what I would refer to as a clean opinion, or no issues brought to your attention. Following the information on the system of internal controls at the back of the report talks about your internal controls over major programs. So we audited your community development block grant funding, which is approximately $800,000. And our report identified no material weaknesses over your system of controls over compliance and no significant deficiencies. So again, the ideal opinion that I would want to receive as a board member. So appears the processes are working per the review and audit by the audit firm. There's additional information on this page, but the big items are clean opinion on the statements, clean opinion on controls, clean opinion on your compliance. So that's great. I want to walk through some slides and just look at the highlights of the financial statements, because there's a tremendous amount of financial data within this document. So I'm going to just briefly look at the slides. I know you have plenty to do this evening, and touch upon the highlights. So if we can go to the next slide, this is a look at the information being presented in the statement of net position on page 11 of the financial statements. So we are looking at your governmental activities, the governmental funds, the general fund, major street, local streets, those operations that are not your business type activities such as water, sewer, electric. So this is just looking at the bottom line, full accrual, business perspective. And you can see at the top, the red line is showing your investment in capital assets. So that's your dollars being put into infrastructure, fire trucks, buildings, pipes in the ground, storm sewers, etc. And that number is being forced down each year by depreciation. So when you buy a fire truck, if it lasts 20 years, 1/20th is being pushed off of that each year. So it's just a positive perspective that you are able to put more infrastructure in place to support your community. Now you can see on here there's a restricted balance, and that's typically your major and local street funds or restricted funding. And over time that'll go up and down based on doing projects on the roads. Also, I believe you invested some of your cemetery dollars in an external foundation which pulled those off your books in the current year. The last line here is looking at the very bottom line, unrestricted, and you can see you have a deficit of unrestricted net position. And if you were to go back probably 8 years, you would see the year of the new pension standards, which you are becoming very familiar with, force that number down. And then there was a new standard related to other post-employment benefits, and that forced that number down. And I think if you would have looked before those standards required that information be put on your statements, you would have been in the positive. The positive picture is you're investing in infrastructure in excess of what it's being depreciated. The next picture that we have is the net position of your business type activities. And so you can see here again, you have that top line, which is holding stable, and this is primarily electric, water, and sewer. And you can see here, We have unrestricted balance of approximately $20 million, and we have the restricted balance, which is straight line. That related to bond covenants at one point in time for bonds that were outstanding for your business type activities, but approximately zero at this point in time. But again, you can see you're holding steady with that investment in infrastructure for your water, sewer, and electric system. And I can tell you your electric system has put a lot of dollars into reclamation, or removing the facilities that were on the island and doing the cleanup after using the facilities over a number of years. But big picture look at that. Business operations, the next picture that we have, this is a picture of those select governmental funds over time. So we have your general fund holding steady at approximately $4 million in fund balance. Then you can see a decline in the other balances. Those are all of the other governmental funds. So now we're looking at modified accrual basis of accounting, or dollars in and dollars out approximately. And that blue line is reflecting when you're putting, you're investing, some of those dollars are going into infrastructure, so they come out of fund balance and they end up as a capital asset in the earlier pictures that we were looking at. The next picture that we have here is just a big picture look at where are the dollars going in the general fund. And you can see year after year they're going more towards public safety and public works, and the other items are kind of holding steady over time. The next picture that we have is going to take a look at your sewer operation. I would just point out that in 2021 had a change in net position, or a net income, which was to the positive. And you can see the 5 years history. It's approximately a break-even operation. 2021 was to the positive. The next picture we have, water, positive change in that position each of the past 5 years. Next picture we have, Light and Power, positive, 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 negative, negative, but a tremendous amount of dollars invested in remediation of the island facilities to remove the ash ponds and things of that nature, and to move forward with, you know, the future of that operation. So that's the next slide, I think, is an advertisement for us, but that's kind of I'm trying to go as quick as I can, but a quick walk through the financial statements. So we're basically looking at the information being provided on pages 11, which is a government-wide financial statement of net position, 12 and 13. 14 is the balance sheet for your governmental funds, and then 19 is the revenue and expense changes in net position of your enterprise funds. So the front financial statements, we've looked at most of them in the slides. Are there questions I can answer about the audit process, the document itself, concerns you may have?
Karen?
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. That was really great context, especially looking at all of the multiple years, and I appreciate that. I guess a couple of my questions, some of my questions just had a couple about your process,
Yes.
and then I had a couple just about our own audit committee.
Yeah, sure.
Just to get some feedback. But regarding your audit, in your view, are our accounting practices in line with some of the best practices or commonly held practices? Are there some areas of improvement that you'd like to share?
I would say the report we provide on your system of internal controls over compliance and over financial reporting are both without identification of significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. So I would say yes, you are hitting the mark with your control processes. Yes.
Okay, but and you've been our auditors for several years, is that correct?
Yes.
So in your view, we have corrected, shall I say, immaterial weaknesses, or others that have been perhaps called out?
Sure.
Has there been a positive reaction to management to maybe,
yes,
making some of those changes?
Yes, we have brought to you material weaknesses on multiple occasions and identified areas of it. We thought that you should take a look at your internal controls or processes to comply with legal requirements. And typically, they're addressed in the following year. So I think that's positive, and so that when there is an issue, you take action.
Excellent, great. Is there any other, were there any other unusual or significant items that we need to be made aware of? Things that, or you noticed based on industry risk, something that's coming?
Sure. We brought to the attention of the audit committee, so we provide a document to the audit committee, talks about our responsibilities, their responsibilities. We brought to their attention the fact that you implemented a new accounting standard in the current year, which is GASB 84. So it presents the information associated with your tax collection and your custodial activities in a different perspective. Now that information of your collecting taxes and dispersing it is presented as one of the financial statements in the front of the report. So this year you implemented that standard. There are about 4 or 5 new standards right on their way. They were all delayed due to COVID. So there is typically a couple standards each year that you need to implement, and due to COVID, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board basically delayed it, each one by multiple years. So in the coming year, you're going to have a new standard related to leasing. So if you have any leasing activity, there will be additional disclosure and accounting for that activity. Last year, you implemented, I think it was last year, you implemented the requirements of reporting an asset retirement obligation associated with your electric utility. So there is a liability recorded on the books associated with taking care of after running a plant type of issue. Additional standards that are out there are their environmental remediation standards, but there is required to be triggering events. So they're out there, but the triggering events haven't occurred at this year end. But I'd be happy to, chat with you folks. I think your staff is pretty well aware of the standards that are coming and are out there. And so there's about 100 accounting standards from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. Probably 80 of them apply to you. So it's a constant learning process for your staff, but I think they have a good handle on it. So there's a couple coming, nothing earth-shattering. The biggest standards that have hit the governmental entities were pension and OPEB accounting from a liability perspective.
So if it's okay, if I wanted to turn to the audit committee and membership of, as you think about independence, of management, the auditor, and ensuring sort of the integrity of the financial reporting. I come from the private sector and I'm very new to city council and municipal government, so you have to bear with me, but in the private sector we have Sarbanes-Oxley. It seems to get a lot more complicated in terms of ensuring independence in the public sector. So my questions actually are about feedback to us. The mere existence of an audit committee isn't enough. It's got to be vigilant. It's got to be informed, diligent, and probing in fulfilling its oversight.
Sure.
So as you look at our audit committee, are there improvements that we can make in terms of membership? Do the members have collectively the experience necessary to carry out that responsibility? And if you could wish anything as our auditor, are there some skills we need to add or any other recommended changes to ensure that balance from an independent standpoint?
First of all, I would point out that you are a rarity in a city that has an audit committee. We work with governmental and not-for-profit organizations. Our firm, Bredeveld Hefner, that's all we work with. Governmental, not-for-profit organizations. Pretty rare to have an audit committee. My experience working with your audit committee is that you have some pretty top-notch resident participants. You have past governmental auditors on your audit committee, which I would just encourage you that they bring some expertise that you don't have from a board member. And so they can, I think they've been great to assist in the audit process. Or I've talked to your audit committee members multiple years ago about issues we were having with completing the audit, which helped facilitate completion of the audit. And that was when we had material weaknesses and things weren't getting actually completed. So I think you have from my perspective, a top-notch audit committee. Good members, I would just say that you need to you maintain that skill set that you have on your audit committee, because people come and people go, but I think you have a quality audit committee. That's my personal perspective.
Thank you.
Right?
I'm glad to hear that we had a clean audit, especially that single audit on the grants, because there's a lot of grant money coming, right? And so we want to be in a good position, and so that's good to hear our accounting procedures are in place there. I did see that you did note maybe some of the federal written procedures could be worked on a little bit to make sure that they're laid out maybe more clearly. Staff weren't able to find a few things. I'm sure I trust that they're working on that. I just want to, know, I mean, obviously going into this audit's fiscal year 2020-2021, we were facing a pretty significant deficit, or planned deficit. We appropriated it that way. We, I think, intended to be a little more conservative than we maybe the council had been in the past, because there was a lot of uncertainty with COVID, and there's concerns about revenue sharing and how that might be impacted, or road funding might be impacted by people driving less and less gas tax and those types of things. And so, I'm glad that at least in the end here, we're ending with a surplus. So that for me is a really huge positive, that I'm glad to see that. I did see, and I actually looked back, this was kind of a thing last year. I just want to make sure our staff are, we do a pretty good job with budget amendments to try to get us, on, or keep us on track, but just those appropriation line items for each department, let's make sure that we're just, everything appropriated by us, so that way you're not running into anything that's not appropriated at the end of the year. I saw that was noted for this year, and last year the same thing, where there was some funds that went over.
Good overages,
over
yes.
Appropriated amounts, and we just gotta make sure that we're following the state law on that. But other than that, I'm really thrilled to hear that we have a good, clean audit, and it's a meaty document. Oh my gosh.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of
thank
information.
You. Yeah, it's a lot of numbers. It's mind-boggling.
I want to say thank you, Peter, and it's been a pleasure working with you again this year. And also, I want to make a statement to our finance department, being so accurate and so visible for everybody to see things that they want to see. It's there, they make the changes, they do it for us, and they actually do a fantastic job. So I want to say kudos to them, say thank you very much for their hard work there. And you looking over and making sure that they're following the correct orders and doing it the right way is just reassuring for the city itself. So glad to see we got a clean audit again, and it's good to hear. And as you were talking about the people on our board, you're absolutely correct. We have a couple of guys that were actually in doing what you do for the government, in the government accounting. So they really are sharp. There's a lot of people on there that do bring up a lot of different things to you, and it's a good repertoire back between all of us. So thanks again, and thanks to everybody that did all their hard work in making sure that we're up and narrow and going straight. So thank you.
Just to follow up on what Ryan was talking about, the expenditures over the appropriations. That has occurred in the last couple audits. Is that an internal control problem? I mean, what?
No, I think so. So what we typically see is virtually any entity, I would say 50% of the entities we work with will have budget overages.
Okay.
And you want them to be to the minimum. But occasionally somebody orders something in, they were expecting it to come in the day after the new year, but it came in one day before. People do these things. Or you got a storm and you had to clean it up. Or somebody wasn't keeping as close of attention as should be.
Okay.
But it's important that you see that that's occurring, and your management knows that that has occurred, but are taking proactive action when they know in advance to bring that information to you, so you make the decision.
Okay. Yeah, it was just something that just stood out in the last couple audits, and I was just...
Yep, it's not uncommon. The state of Michigan oftentimes will say, what are you going to do about this occurring? and monitor, and then bring that to the board or let staff know if it's not appropriated, you can't spend it.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, thank you very much for your presentation and for joining us tonight, and also for your audit. And I also would like to recognize our finance department, and especially Amy, who has done a really fine job putting all this together for you. And I will say that by reading the audit, I learned a lot more about the city, and I found it extremely helpful, even though it took me a long time.
Yes, yes.
Your Honor, I just had one last question. You mentioned we're unusual in that we have an audit committee and one that's made up of some very, very qualified individuals. What do other municipalities do? Is it really just an extension of the city council? The city
Yes,
council
that's the most typical.
is it an open? Yeah. Okay.
Most typical that the audit report be brought right to the council or commission, depending on the situation, without this intermediary that maybe would be there to assist. So I appreciate the fact that you have an audit committee, because they have assisted in getting the audit done when there were issues. Versus, typically the auditors, our typical audit is we meet with management, we audit what management provides, and then we go to the council or commission. But in your case, we actually meet with some of the board members as well as the citizen members from the audit committee before the audit, and then we bring back the audit before it's even published to that same group, and then we bring it to the entire board. So most of the time there isn't that in between, which I think it's an appropriate activity and action that facilitates the process.
Certainly, if you have qualified people on it, as we do, it's
right.
It would add tremendous value.
Right. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Our next presenter is Derek Gatos, Public Works Director, and he's going to talk to us about Eagle Water Distribution and Filtration Licensing.
Good evening, Your Honor, the Council. Derek Gatos, Public Works Director. I've been talking with Pat over this presentation for a couple years, and I finally made a stance. I took some time at the end of December to put this together at home, because I really feel it's really important that the council know what our staff do and the licenses and professionalism that they hold. So the Safe Drinking Water Act requires us to be licensed water operators, whether we're filtrating water or distributing water. There's 3 types of licenses. An F license is called a filtration license, or a complete filtration. That's what our plant operates under. And then our distribution is called an S license, and it governs all. I think there's like 2,600 public distribution systems in the state. And then there's a limited treatment one. Those are for typically your well water systems, where they need to add some chemicals, typically chlorine, or there might be some iron removal, systems. So it's limited. It's not full, complete treatment. But anyways, those are the 3 types of licenses. And our 2 systems, our distribution system and our filtration system, requires the F and the S. They offer these licenses every twice a year, in the fall and the spring. COVID kind of threw some of those off, and we have some guys that were trying to advance through the licensing process that weren't able to write last year. But we did have three people that actually passed their licenses testing this fall, and I really want to, tonight's presentation is to honor them. But this is how hard these licenses are to get. About 2,500, 2,600 water distribution systems in the state. There's only just over 600 of the top level license, which I hold as your operator in charge of your water system, and that someday will be passed along to the next person that I'm going to announce. And then the secondary license underneath that, the second highest level, there's only another 600 of those or so. So there's only 1,200 people that in the state that can operate our system, and we're very fortunate to have 2 of them. Excuse me. We have 5 total people that could operate our system that are licensed high enough. So I'm very fortunate to have a great group of people that have that capability. On the filtration side, for years we only had one person. We have to have the highest level license to treat the water that we treat. You know, by the way, the Naus plant actually treats about a 50,000 population base, and that's what they base it on, all of our communities together. So it takes the highest level of licensing to operate the plant. And Joe Vanderstel did it for over 35 years. I don't know, not fully as the manager, we're seeing the whole thing, but he had the highest level, and he was the only one there that had that. We brought on board his replacement, who quickly gained the level of expertise and licensing they needed in Eric Law. He came from water filtration system in Colorado, so he had a leg up, but still didn't pass his tests each time he took it, so it's pretty hard. So we have one F1 license, and that's it. In the decades that Joe was here and running the plant, when he went on vacation, he didn't really go on vacation. He was still had to be a phone call away in case there was something wrong with the plant. And that was something that I deemed wasn't appropriate for our next manager. We're going to have at least 2 F1 operators in case someone wanted to take a vacation, they really could take a vacation. So one of our our operators at the plant, a newly promoted crew leader, has just obtained his second highest license in the F2. The average number of the percentage that passed the test for an S1, highest level distribution, is only 45%. And it gets even lower there with the F1 at 42%. The F licenses are way more less in the state. There's not as many plants. As you can see, our one plant services multiple communities, but there's only 175 operators that in the state that have an F1, and only 139 that have an F2. So we're very fortunate to have the employees, again, that have taken their time. They train not only on city time, we send them to school, but they also train and study after work. And I've trained them guys after work and come in and we'll study before the exams come up with them. But tonight, I'd like to honor Matt Wade. He's our streets and utilities manager. He did pass his S1 license. And Matt can tell you how hard it is because it wasn't his first time that he was able to pass it, but he kept at it and he passed. The next one I'd like to honor is Adam Van Overen. He's our new crew leader at the water filtration plant. He got his F2 license. And no, I don't have the actual licenses yet. We just got word actually in early December. We'll get them sometime in January. And then the third one is Mr. Clayton Zimmerman, who has gotten his first water distribution license in the S4. And we have 11 S4 licenses in the city, 3 S2s and S1. In a filtration plant side, we have 1 F4, and that's actually me. Since I've been here, I've actually went and got licensed as a filtration plant operator, and I've always told Eric and Joe, I said, well, you don't want me up there filtrating, but I have a license to do so, so I'm your last line of defense. But most of our operators have an F3. We have 2 of them with an F2, and Eric has the F1. So, but I just want to thank these guys and let you know the hard work that they put in educating and the professionalism it takes to operate our water systems.
Derek, thanks for bringing these employees to our attention, and gentlemen, congratulations on your achievements. It's important for everyone in this community that our workers are motivated to stay competent and to provide excellent service to us, and we very much appreciate your efforts.
We had a chance to go through the water plant, myself and the mayor and Karen, and it's an impressive operation. I mean, they do it, Eric and the whole staff does an unbelievable job, and I just wanted to congratulate you guys because it's very, very impressive to see.
I just want to say, I've always said it, is that our employees here are top notch. Grand Haven we can be very proud of everybody that works for us. They work hard, they're very diligent at their work, and they want to get it done right, and I got to congratulate you both, all three of you guys on your advancements. And Adam, I've known you since forever, so congratulations. So anyways, thank you guys very much, and thank to the whole city operation. I can't say anything more than say that they are top-notch.
Karen?
Very impressive achievement. Thank you all, and congratulations.
Brian?
Thank you, Derek, for bringing this to our forefront here and sticking with it to get us a presentation. I learned a lot through reading your memo, but then, through your presentation, and thank you, all of you, for your hard work through, it looks like very, very difficult testing. Clean, safe drinking water is absolutely critical to our community and every community, but to know that we have good, hardworking staff who are doing everything they can every day to make sure that clean, safe product is provided is we really can't thank you enough for that.
And
so
such
thank you.
deep expertise, so, really, thank you very much.
Eric, if you need ceremonial assistance in awarding these things, the mayor is available. And we were invited back, so just in case.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You bet. Thank you very much. All right, moving on. I believe we've left 12A in our dust, so we're going to go to new business, item 12B.
Yep, and that is consideration by the city council of a resolution to receive and place on file the annual financial reports for June 30th, 2021, as presented by Vandervelde Hoffner.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Fritz, second by Lowe. Any discussion? Again, I'd like to congratulate our finance department for a clean audit. It's a big deal, and for best practices in accounting and in finance. I thank them very much. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Fritz?
Yes.
Councilmember Lowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Cummins?
Yes?
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Motion carries. The next item on your agenda is consideration by the City Council of a resolution to grant a one-year extension to April 13th, 2023 to complete construction and commence business operations of a medical marijuana provisioning center located at 1021 Jackson Avenue.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So move.
Second?
Moved by McLaughlin, second by Cummins. Discussion? I actually have a couple questions about this. Is Jennifer here? Jennifer, would you mind? I don't have enough familiarity with the marijuana ordinance that we've passed, and I sent an email out earlier in the day, but not particularly early in the day, so you may not have seen it. But my question is, this isn't just a building issue, this is also a licensing issue for marijuana, medicinal sales operation, true?
This particular request is simply for a one-year extension for the 1021 Jackson approval.
Right, I understand that, but what I'm trying to ask, maybe not very articulately, is, all right, let me ask this. Was there competition for these licenses beyond the four parties that got them?
So we held a lottery where we received 7 applications, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And only 4 of them were able to move forward to apply for a special land use permit.
So there were only 4 applicants?
There were 7.
Right, initially, but only 4. Why were only 4 allowed to move forward?
There's a cap in the regulatory ordinance to only allow 4 provisioning centers in the city, so we didn't want to allow more than that maximum to move forward to apply for a special land use permit and then eventually open a shop.
Okay, so my question is, are we opening ourselves as a city to litigation? I spent the weekend reading about litigation between disappointed applicants for marijuana permitting permits and cities, and there are currently ongoing litigation in Traverse City, Port Huron, Detroit, Warren, Beverly, and a couple of others that I don't remember right now. And it was between the people who were, the people who were given the permits were perfectly happy. The people who were not given the permits were, shall we say, disenchanted. So my question, this is my question, not very articulately put. If we gave these people a permit conditional upon completion and beginning operations, and I understand the wetlands issues and why that wasn't possible thus far. What I want to know, if you can tell me, is to what extent, if any, do we expose ourselves to a complaint by one of the disappointed candidates for these licenses? Got any sense of that?
Your Honor, can I jump in here? Because I've actually read up on some of the issues that you're talking about. Where that litigation is coming into play is where a city has granted medicinal provisioning licenses to, let's say, 4, but then went on to grant recreational licenses to just 2, and the 2 that weren't selected, say, are suing the city for why not them. It's not about so much about the 4, and the 4 we awarded when? In 2020?
It was the summer of 2020.
Right.
So one thing I'll say is that we'll defer to the city attorney on some of those litigation concerns. But I will say for the 3 applicants that were not successful in becoming one of the first 4 pulled from the lottery in the summer of 2020, those lottery positions, 5, 6, 7, expired in December of 2020. So at this time, if one of the 4 that were granted the ability to move forward in the process were not to be successful in opening in their time frame, 5, 6, and 7 would not be the first ones in the gate. We would consider holding a new lottery sometime this year, perhaps, to find a new applicant to move forward with one or more of the available provisioning center permits.
That is, and I appreciate that, and that is kind of part of my question, is we held a lottery, 4 people won. One party hasn't fulfilled its obligations or isn't going to be able to by April, and is asking for an extension. What's our authority to grant an extension without holding another lottery and comparing them to whomever else might request consideration?
My understanding is that because this is part of the regulatory ordinance, the City Council would have the authority to grant such an extension. The ordinance as written doesn't allow for it specifically. There are no provisions for the extension, so it's fully in your decision.
Well, have you confirmed that with the city attorney?
That's the guidance I recall receiving from him, yes. That's why we brought this to you in this way, with just a resolution for you to consider.
So you have discussed this specific matter with the city attorney?
Yes, the ability for you to grant an extension to one of these applicants under these circumstances, yes.
Okay. Does that raise anything for you, Pat?
No, that is, we asked, how would we go about this if they needed an extension? Can we grant it administratively? Can the planning commission look at it? And the attorney's response was the only body that could do it would be city council by resolution.
Okay, and Karen, just, I'm going to disagree with you slightly on your characterization. The Traverse City case is one case, but there are in at least 8 municipalities, there are disappointed permit seekers suing municipalities about how they're handling this permitting process, and this seems, if the city attorney has, go ahead, Pat.
Well, while we were discussing this, I don't know if Ron had a chance to check his emails earlier, and I do see the email that you sent out asking this very question about the liability concern of the jilted permit applicants who might be upset that they don't.
Or prospective jilted applicants, because do we have to reopen this, is the question.
His answer is no, it doesn't open us to liability. Someone could make the claim, but I don't think it would be valid. If we give an extension because we are thinking that in working through the ordinance for the first time, the deadlines should be studied further, that is a reasonable approach. So I think that's kind of what we're doing. We realize, looking at it now, that a 1-year time frame from that initial permit granting to build a brand-new building and get open was probably not reasonable. So the only stumbling block I might be able to see, or precedents you might be setting, if somebody else has the same situation later where they need a 1-year extension, you may need to give that in another occurrence if it should come up again.
Okay. Does that raise anything for anybody else?
It sounds a lot better. I had some reservations myself, because I remember when we did that, and there's two different things. One's for the medical marijuana, had a certain time period for them to be in operation, and then also the building separately. But now that we had an opinion, it makes me feel a little more comfortable, though.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
Jennifer, I just got one question for you. Just, if 2 licenses go away, we have 4. If 2 go away, do we have to open it back up? Do you know, I mean, and if you don't know it from a legal standpoint, that's fine, but would we have to open it back up?
Do you mean?
I don't think so. I don't think we're required to have 4 operating provisioning centers in the city.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Oh, good.
Okay. Anybody else?
No, I'm just glad, I'm glad our city attorney has reviewed this, and opined on it. It's a good item that if we are going to make further changes to our regulatory ordinance, that we take a look at this item. You know, Jennifer's pointed out in our memo here that if it's simply like a existing building that needs some construction build out, that they're kind of treated differently than a completely new building that's being constructed from nothing. So granting this extension seems consistent with the way we're handling buildings that are already built out. I think that the applicants have provided sufficient evidence of their attempts to work with Eagle to commence instruction, and these wetland sites are challenging, and that's been a planned development for a number of years. So at this point, I'm comfortable moving forward with an extension.
Yeah, I think I am as well, although I think Councilman McLaughlin raises an interesting question, Pat, about the council is, obviously, we're talking about the recreational, this is sort of the issue that's coming back to council after Planning Commission looks at it. Is there, would it be advisable from the city attorney's perspective, Pat, if we put a moratorium on accepting any new application for medicinal or otherwise provisioning center until we can go through our whole process of deliberation for understanding? And the reason why I say that is, Your Honor, you brought up some of the potential litigation. Until we decide what we want going forward, is just accepting the application, does that put us into a position, and should we protect ourselves until we know what we want to do in case any of these licenses, the 4 that we have, expire?
I think if we want to do that, we're probably going to have to do it on a separate council meeting.
Yes, that's what I'm asking. That perhaps that would be a good thing to do next. Just looking to you to maybe, until we work through all of the issues, that it would be good for us not, to put a moratorium on accepting any application, so there's no confusion, or we're not sending any messages out to people that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and typically we like to be really surgical about how we draft those, so I'll talk to Jennifer. Currently the ordinance doesn't really give us real good guidance about when we do go back out for applications, but I think a positive statement by council like you're suggesting would probably be a good idea, so that we do have that clarification, and also so we send a clear message to people who might be out there looking at this or waiting or thinking something's going to open up. Let's be real clear about it, that we're going to wait.
We're not even, we don't.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? At this point, there are 4 outstanding permits for medical marijuana, is that true?
Nope, there's one active business on Beacon
Right, I
Boulevard.
got that.
Um,
There are 2 under construction?
The one at 1021 Jackson is not yet under construction. The one by the D&W grocery store, the shopping center, they have pulled a building permit. I'm not sure how much progress they have made. And the one at Rendezvous, I believe, is not going to happen.
Interesting. Okay.
And just one more comment about your concern about the moratorium. I think that'll be I love that because it's a clear message to the community. Because otherwise, if we start getting these potential locations available, we'll start getting phone calls. But that being said, we don't accept applications on a rolling basis. I will not take any applications right now until there's a formal application window, and it requires public notice to inform people when that window is, which leads to a lottery. So it's pretty formalized. So just for the community right now, we are not accepting applications.
So you may not need a moratorium, but it would bolster your position?
It'd be a clear message to the community that we're not about ready to post the notice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Lowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Cummins?
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Motion carries. The next item on your agenda is consideration by the City Council of a resolution to increase seasonal employee wages by 5.5% to attract and retain talent effective January 3rd, 2022.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
In support?
Motion by Cummins, support by Fritz. Any discussion? Are we ready to go? Zach, we got Zach. Sorry, Zach. I'm not sure. I think your memo covered most of my issues, but.
Great, I'll just
you wanna-
briefly comment that I'm
go
Zach,
ahead.
I'm the HR manager for the city of Grand Haven. And we've all seen the frontline worker wages increase dramatically over the past year and 2 years. So this will help us be able to attract and retain that seasonal talent. Starting in March is when we start posting for those positions and hiring, and I have to hire 40 just for the city and 20 for Nora, so that's a lot of seasonal positions to fill. Nora increased their wages last year up to $12 an hour, so based on that information along with the wage comparables that I've done and presented to you, it seems like starting out $12 an hour for a seasonal employee would be a great place to start.
So I know it's largely laborers, and a lot of them are places like the marina or cutting lawns, Zach, but where do you advertise, and what are you looking for?
Yep, so definitely referrals are the best way. People like to, in that age group, they like to work with their friends all summer, which makes sense, right? So that's definitely been a great mechanism to recruit. I post in all of the schools, so I have contacts with each of the schools to get those posted and get students go to the counselors asking for jobs, and they refer us, so that's great too.
Minimum age?
For the city, it has to be 18 years of age.
18, okay, good to know. All right, anything else by anybody?
I do want to correct that a little bit. Mini golf will accept 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, but there gets to be a problem with collecting money after dark. There's a lot of requirements.
Interesting. Okay, thanks.
Just one question. Are we able to use this as a tool to recruit people into some of the trades, as a feeder system into
Do they
any
stay?
of the, yeah, I mean, as young people, that are motivated, this is a great look-see, right, for seasonal employees. Do we have a track record of success in that area? Or?
Yeah, I think of one right now we hired in the fall. She was a seasonal employee, and her family used to work for the city, and now she's a full-time DPW employee, totally out of her career path, but just loves the city and loved what she learned during her employment here as a seasonal employee, and we see that continuing over and over again.
Are you able to take some of the seasonal employees and bring them through some of our departments so they can see all the cool stuff? Our water filtration system, I think it's just a wonderful, I don't know if we do that, Pat, but we probably should.
Yeah, I'm glad there's a support for that, because that's definitely an idea that we've been throwing out. We've been trying to figure out how to cover their time, because we would have to maybe pay them for that, figuring out how to best do that, but that's great that there's support for that. It's a great idea.
We've got many employees that have come up that way.
Mm-hmm.
Clint Holt, who just
Captain
retired
Holt
after
last
29
week.
years, was a deckhand.
I think it's a great way to kind of get the, get some exposure, and so I think it would be worth paying them for a couple hours to do that, during the summer or the season that you have them. Right, thank you.
When it's raining. All right, could the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Cummins?
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz?
Yes.
Councilmember Lowe?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Motion carries. The next item on your agenda is consideration by the City Council of a resolution to select HDR, Ann Arbor, Michigan, to be the environmental consultant of record and authorize city staff to negotiate a service contract for holistic environmental consultation and remediation services.
Could I get a motion?
So moved.
In a second.
Motion by McLaughlin, second by Fritz. Looks like Derek's ready to present.
Yes, I'll make this quick. Back in the fall, the city and BLP met with Eagle, and they suggested this path. Pat actually put together an RFP in September, and we received those in October, and then he passed those RFPs on to me in late around October, and over November and early December, we interviewed or went through the process of selecting some firms to interview, take the next step, and then eventually come to the conclusion of recommending this firm for that. And I know there's some calls to postpone that vote. That's up to you. But this is just the process of we started on August, and here we are in January with a potential
Derek,
resolution.
if we did postpone that vote for one meeting, so for 2 weeks, do you see a material change in going forward? I mean, it sounds like you're ready to move forward.
No, yeah, it's been a long process. We engaged with the BLP, with Eric Booth was on the committee, and it's been a long time. So, but another 2 weeks, I don't think necessarily hurts us. It just pushes us two weeks farther back. Again, in my memo, I said hopefully we'll be up to speed in the first quarter if we did now. So it's going to take 3 months to get up to speed, but that would be up to you if you'd like to do that. I don't see it necessarily hurting the process.
Okay. Kevin, anybody got anything else?
Pat, you've had some conversations with Eagle. 2 weeks make a difference?
I'll just say that about a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, Kent Walters called me and said, "What's going on? We thought you'd have a consultant by now," and I had to explain to him that we had some hang-ups with scheduling the interviews, and it did get postponed a little bit, but I expected it to be on the agenda tonight. So, should you not, and we're not hiring them tonight, we're saying that's your horse, you've made a good selection, go and get a proposal from them, because we don't have a scope of services or a budget yet, but we would want to come back at your next meeting with that, so you could then take the next step and approve some letter of agreement with them.
Yeah. So is it okay if I ask Mike? So Mike,
Yes,
you
I think if Mike's willing to answer.
Yeah, if you
Derek,
willing to
I think
answer. I mean,
you're
this
good
is-
to sit for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, I understand where, you and Andrea are coming from, but if we're not in fact going to hire him just at this point, just to, as Pat said, say, hey, listen, these are the people we want to deal with, we still have to negotiate it. We still want to sit down with you. I mean, that's clear for, I think, for all of us. What is what would be the hang up of the BLP just to say, hey, this is the horse we want to, because
I think what we're asking for is just to have this meeting with the public and you guys and us to get an update. And if there's no rush, I mean, if Pat's saying, it puts us 2 weeks behind and there's no harm, we have not had a chance since.
That's not exactly what Pat said, Mike, I don't think. I think what he said is Eagle's waiting on us to provide them a consultant that they can move forward with. So.
Sure, but they haven't given you a hard deadline or anything, right, Pat, that we're held to. So I mean, by saying there's no harm, there's no deadline that we're missing, or, it's not going to hurt the situation to wait 2 weeks.
Mike, can I ask just a question? So it sounds to me like, I think, I can't speak for everyone, but we have confidence in the process that Derek and his team and in coordination with the BLP, someone from the BLP I know, went through to look at all of this and kind of come to this conclusion. And so, but we also, out of respect for you, want to realize that you have your own consultant who was in the mix and that you've been working with. Is this postponement to have our meeting? I just don't want it to be construed as ours, a lack of confidence in what Derek and team have come as a recommendation here at all, because we're kind of anxious to move ahead. But are you asking then just to pause? But
we're asking you to get some more information on what's happened in the last 6 months that maybe you don't know. It's just an informational meeting.
From the BLP? Okay.
From the BLP, from the consultants that are out there, the environmental consultant, the environmental attorney, and just get everybody up to speed before you make a decision. I don't think that that's a terribly unreasonable request. Andrea asked for it, I asked for it. Like we said, we have not sat down and talked about any of this since July of 2021. It's been a very long time. I think there's lots of information to share with you guys that would be valuable to hear. The public could hear as well. If we're talking about being transparent and sharing with the public, which I truly believe in, I think that that's something that, I'm recommending that you postpone your decision, and just a good opportunity to hear, get a holistic, we're going through a holistic approach, but it'd be a good opportunity for everybody in the room, including the public and some concerned citizens, to find out about the current activities on Harbor Island. 2-week postponement just to help make that decision and get all the information above board and clearly understood.
Okay, let me ask, I'm sorry, Ryan, go ahead. I just was going to ask, is January 13th a possibility for the rest of you?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Is, since Eagle's the one that's actually want to know what we're going to do, and not so much what the VLP is going to do, they wanted us to have a consultant, is that correct?
That's why Kent called me, to see where we were at with the rest of the island.
They keep pressuring us.
Well, I think at the August meeting we walked, or that, was it a July meeting?
July 15th, yeah.
July 15th, we walked away from that meeting talking about a holistic approach, and Eric Booth was on the committee, right,
Yep.
with you, and I don't think, I don't know if you recall Eric's decision. Did he recommend, was this a unanimous decision?
It was not.
Okay. So I think that that's, this would just be an opportunity for you guys to hear.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Westbrook, for being here. As a council member who has been here through this process so far, if there's any really information that hasn't been shared that's dramatic or that really would be a surprise to me, I think the previous council at least was pretty up to speed on where things were at. The new council members have at least received some recent correspondence from Eagle to the BLP on December 9th. But I'm definitely sympathetic to new members wanting to make sure that they're up to speed. But I think that it goes both ways. I think that if the BLP has certain information that they want to share with the council about where we're at,
public,
yeah, and the community where we're at, I think that's good. But I think it's also important that your board and the community, which they've partly been able to do tonight by this information being in our packet, have the opportunity to hear from our staff and what they've been told by Eagle, and then kind of what we're trying to accomplish through this consultant process. I think it goes both ways. I think if we're talking about making sure that everybody has all the information, I think there's some opportunities that the community, previously the BLP, after some concerns related to correspondence that the BLP was having with Eagle and Eagle was having back with the BLP, that information wasn't publicly available, eventually was. That correspondence currently is not been made available on your website, and so I think there's some opportunity to have that December 9th. I just checked, this afternoon. So that December 9 letter from Eagle to the BLP and the November 5th and October 27th letter from the BLP to Eagle, I think are important documents that folks should be able to see and review before, we were to have, that type of meeting. So, I'd be amendable to, it's not that we haven't tried to meet. I think we want to meet. We want to meet to this.
Talked about a meeting
Yeah.
in
And
December.
and we had
right?
one
Like-
scheduled, and unfortunately, because of some medical, related issues, no fault of anybody, we had to cancel that. So we did have this as an item to discuss, and we just haven't been able to, pick that back up because, your board has still continued to have some of those problems. So, I don't have a problem with.
We have to have a quorum for this January 13th meeting. It's just whoever can attend can
Right.
attend.
But I would
So-
say, though, that I don't have a problem delaying this for 2 weeks, but I think it should be to meet with a quorum of your board. We still want to hear from your board on where, so we can have an actual discussion between the two boards about where we're at on this and a whole host of issues with snow melt, the diesel plant, our relationship,
Agreed.
other policy matters. So if we're going to wait 2 weeks, I would like to see us, well, I guess I'll make a motion to table. If somebody wants to second it, I'll just kind of lay some thoughts on what that might look like. if that's
I'll
okay.
second that because I'm thinking along the same lines. I think that what we want in that meeting is a little different than maybe what other people want. I really want us to have our original meeting that we said we were
Yeah.
going to have. So if we're going to postpone this decision and not move, ahead for 2 weeks, that's the meeting I want to have. I don't want to have any,
If I could clarify, my motion to table, and if you're willing to second, it's with the following, I guess, thoughts or conditions. I'd be tabled to our next meeting, this decision at least, to our next meeting, but that we meet with a quorum of the BLP board, that the BLP post that correspondence ahead of time so folks can take a look at that, that the BLP would, that the mayor and the BLP chair or vice chair would put together an agenda that would include the BLP providing a brief presentation to both boards, but that our city staff would also be able to present on this HDR proposal and why it's being made, and that, we look at including, other matters that are of interest, including snow melt, the diesel plant, our relationship going forward, and any other matters. That would be kind of the thought that I would have to frame it, and why we would wait for 2 weeks.
I don't think there's going to be a problem with a quorum on January 13th. So I think that we've got everybody here that we need to.
Good.
I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to promise that, but, we've had some health issues.
Right. Well, but I want to say, we can't,
Confident we'll
right,
have
but we
to
can't
do
wait
that.
forever, we got to make some decisions here. I mean, and we can't, we have to, at some point, move forward. We can't wait forever on the BLP board.
Medical issues with board members, and I apologize for that.
I
but they-
understand that, but
they
we
weren't-
also have,
That's for sure.
Okay.
so
understand.
I'm willing to second that.
Any discussion on that motion? I'd like to thank Mr. Westbrook for coming forward, and I'd like to say, I am very interested in working constructively with the BLP board on common issues that we all know exist. And I think everybody else on this board is as well. It's just, that's all I want to say. You're good, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
not easy for a new member to stand up to take that,
Yeah, it's nice of you. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
A lot of work to do.
So, we have two motions. Derek, you got something else you want to tell us?
Yeah, I just want, logistically, let's look in the calendar. In order to bring it back to the next council meeting, if we were to vote on it tonight, would mean I'd have to have everything completed by probably the end of the day Friday, so we have a Monday deadline for our new draft.
Don't
So
point at me.
No,
You don't have to point at me.
Wait. Okay,
It's
I'm
good.
totally
But it's
missing
pretty,
this.
it's really not realistic. If you did postpone it, it would still go probably to the February 7th award. So that would give us 2 weeks to, once the 18th is,
Well, we can put it on for the 18th, just like it was on tonight, and you
Yeah,
can
that's what I
always
was
table
gonna
it
say,
then.
like,
You know,
yeah.
so we'll just plan on the same identical thing that was on the agenda
Right.
tonight. And if you want to correct our course at your next meeting, you can.
yeah,
Agree.
Sounds good.
I know Pat mentioned to try to award it at the next meeting. I don't think that's probably logistically possible. So it'd be the February 7th no matter what, so.
I understand, and I just want to say one other thing, which is, having reviewed the credentials of this firm that you've recommended,
Very good.
I'm very impressed.
Yeah.
I don't want you to think we're not trying to support you and the work you've done on this,
Absolutely.
because I was very impressed, and I think that probably the
Yes.
other members of the
Yeah, and just to
council here were as well.
Just to follow up on Mike's comment about, was this unanimous? It was unanimous by all three of us, this was the best firm. It wasn't unanimous necessarily to go in this direction.
I understand. Okay.
That's a good point. And actually, to our staff, we make sure that their board specifically gets this information ahead of the meeting, what you had in our packet. So it was really good information.
Yeah, it really was.
All right, so now there's two motions on the table, and I'm a little confused about
So what you should
forward with it.
vote on now is the motion to postpone this to the next meeting that was made by Councilmember Cummings and seconded by Councilmember Lowe.
Okay, is there any further discussion on that motion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz,
Yes.
Councilmember Lowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Cummings,
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Okay, so that is postponed to your next meeting. And you move on your agenda to reports by the city council.
How about we start with Councilmember Fritz tonight?
Oh, I'm used to going first. I think I've done that for about 18 years. I've been doing it going first. Congratulations to all, Mr. McGinnis and everybody, and Ashley and everybody for the New Year's Eve party we had downtown. It was, I would say it was a smashing success by the looks of all the people that were down there. It was really good. And having the social district down there made it even a little bit more enjoyable for a lot of people. Other than that, one thing I'm really disappointed is that when we went into closed session, I didn't get any update or anything of what it was for. Anytime 3 or 4 of our members want to go into a closed session, please send out the rest of the people what's going to happen there so we can at least look and see and not be surprised as we go into closed session. I don't find that being very transparent is what everybody says it was. I have received none of it, so it would be very nice that if we get some information ahead of time. All the years I've been on here, anytime we went in closed session, you always got in some kind of form the read over. It was classified, and then when you're done, you turn it in, you're done, that's it. But at least you got to know what was going to happen. I don't like surprises. I think it was very rude. I don't think it was very appropriate that you did this to us. Actually, to me, I didn't get no information whatsoever on it. And when it came into the closed session and we did that, it was not appropriate to do. If you want to be transparent, let us know. We're a small board, and we need to work together here. We don't need surprises. I was very, very disappointed. That's not the way you do it.
Okay. Kevin?
I got nothing, thanks.
Karen?
I have nothing to report.
Ryan?
I'm not sure what closed session Mr. Fritz is referring to, so perhaps there was something I missed too, but
Me too.
I'm really not.
We went into executive session, closed session, a few weeks back.
Correct, that was placed on our agenda.
Yes, there was no information. I got zero information on it, or what we were going in there for. And how come,
For a
whatever.
personality evaluation of the city manager was the reason that was on the agenda, and that's
From the emails I've gotten recently, it's a whole lot different.
all right, well,
Okay,
that,
I think maybe we'll leave it at that, and
Well,
individuals can speak with one another individually if necessary.
all right, I just had a few comments, Mayor, just as part of my report tonight. We didn't, the marijuana ballot proposal was removed, but just a few comments I wanted to make about the memo that the mayor submitted to the city council that was part of our public packet. I want to assure folks that, from my perspective, there's been no, the council is not rushing a decision here. The staff, when they put the motion, proposed motion on the agenda, picked April as the date that Planning Commission would return to us. There was some discussion about that, but the vote of the council was to, the 3-2 vote was to have the Planning Commission look at it and return to us in April. I specifically said at that meeting that I did not want to rush our planning commission, and I'll make it very clear tonight, if the planning commission needs more time for whatever reason, I will have no problem giving them any more time that they may need to make sure that they do their due diligence. I have some concern with the mayor's assertion about this being, just a community values issue. When I hear that, it makes me wonder if folks that I know that choose to use legal marijuana as adults, if they have less of community values than perhaps this community would be willing to tolerate in some way, or that my friends and colleagues who live in the city of Muskegon or Grand Rapids or Lowell or any other community that or Crockery Township, our neighbors in Crockery, that if they allow recreational marijuana sales, that their values are somewhat less than ours, like we have some kind of contempt on them. That concerns me, and in fact, I think that kind of language goes to really stigmatize folks and keep some folks maybe in the shadows or not as willing to speak up if maybe they do have a potential problem that they need to work through. And that folks in our community might look down upon them if it's against our community's values that they might choose to use a legal product or have that legal product sold in our community. And so that language is a little concerning to me. The mayor's assertion that sending it to the Planning Commission will somehow bury it from public view. Just 2 weeks ago, we sent a number of items back to the Planning Commission to consider changes to. The mayor didn't seem to have a concern with that occurring and didn't feel that was burying it from public view. And so I welcome any community feedback, whatever side of this issue that you're on. I'm willing to meet with you. I've heard emails, I've received emails from and Facebook messages from both sides of the issue. The city, now we all of our planning commission meetings are on video. You can view them and actually listen to them back. Our planning commission packets are posted, so you can read every bit of staff information that's presented. All the comments that council gets on this issue are put in our packets. I post the information on our social media. The Tribune had a front page article about this. The MLive through the Muskegon Chronicle had an article about this that I posted on my social media that reached over 4,000 people. So no one's, me, and I don't think any others on the council that sent this to the Planning Commission, no one's trying to hide this. We have, let's vet the issue. So I just want to make those points about the memo. I think it painted some of us that sent it to the Planning Commission in a light that wasn't quite accurate. So thank you.
And I'd like to say that Councilmember Cummins is right in many respects, except I'd also like to say that fast-tracking something through the Planning Commission does give people an opportunity to weigh in, but the visibility of what's going on in the Planning Commission is not very broad within the community. And so any issue that goes into the Planning Commission and comes out to us as a more or less resolved recommendation for us gives the community much less information about what's going on. That is my personal opinion. City Manager report.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to follow up on a plan review meeting we're going to have this Wednesday, the 5th. It got moved from 1:30 until 2 p.m., and I usually look for one member on council to sit on that plan review committee and take a look at that. It's a plan development amendment. It's a major amendment, so it has to go through the whole process again. And those always start out with a sit down with the applicant just to give them some idea of what they might expect at the various boards. So we have one planning commissioner, one council member, a variety of staff members there to just give them feedback so they can submit their best application. So I'm just looking for a volunteer from U5 to attend that meeting this Wednesday at 2 p.m.
I could do that, Pat.
Okay, is that okay? Karen's good with that? Great, thank you, Karen.
I got a brother I'm trying
And
to
this
get
meeting
back
is
to
when they
last
present it, so I don't have anything to show you right now. And that's ideal, as we get it cold, they pitch it and tell us why they're doing it. They're going to look at extending the second deck a little bit towards the lake, I think, and then adding an apartment upstairs.
Yeah.
But not changing, I don't think they're gonna change the profile at all as far as the view of the lake from Highland Park. So we'll get that on Wednesday when we sit down with them. And the other item you've already covered. So that is all I had tonight, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, I think it's last call to the audience, but I gotta find the agenda for the language.
I just have a quick comment. Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I'd like to actually encourage that the Planning Commission people have a city email address. I find it very difficult to communicate with them, and I'm not even sure how it's supposed to be done. And all of the council and the administration, Derek's group, I mean, it's so easy. Just go to the directory and you can communicate. It seems like they've got a critical function, but I don't feel that the communication pathway is really there. Just an observation. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. I think that the communication pathway to them is through Jennifer Howland as their staff liaison. I'm guessing you know that, but that's what I'm letting you know.
I know she's the liaison, and I just feel that it's really nice to be able to communicate with people instead of trying to go through somebody else. Okay. I feel that things get filtered.
You need to be at the microphone if you're gonna talk, it's like, we're on the radio.
That's
Thanks,
all right.
Jim.
I think I'm just going to read the description of last call to the audience. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to call in may dial 616-935-3285. If it continues ringing, please remain on the line until your turn. We will take all callers tonight.
Hello again, Carolyn Taylor, 15177 Ferris Street. I just wanted to add a few things with regard to, again, the possibly opening up recreational marijuana sales in our city. One of the things is that I believe it's close to 80% maybe in Michigan of municipalities opted out of even doing anything, and I think a large reason for that, I know for sure some of them, the reason anyway, is to just hold back and wait and see, because there's just so many things that are yet unknown. Even tonight it turned up there's like litigation going on in some communities in our own state that, you know, for whatever reasons. With regard to the, you know, I don't know that I think anyone that specifically thinks they're better than somebody else. I think we tend to use values sometimes as a term of just, you know, being a comfortable place for everybody, maybe. I don't know 100% where that one came from. But additionally, when it comes to things like addiction, and this is in all people, not just kids, when you're addicted to nicotine, you can go to your doctor and, you know, you can work through some things. There are medical treatments available, like a nicotine patch or something, and, you know, that can help you to overcome that addiction. When you have even opiates, there are MAT-induced or MAT treatments, and there are different things available to help you come off your addiction of opiates, which is also, of course, very challenging. With alcohol, there are things to help you with your addiction to alcohol, such as a Vivitrol injection that you could get monthly, or there are some other oral medications to take. When it comes to marijuana, there's nothing but prayer, and prayer seriously is not enough. It's just not enough. It just isn't. One other kind of interesting fact is my day job is I am a mortgage lender at a large bank. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that when you go to get a mortgage, mortgages are backed by the federal government. So you need to have funds that are proven to be legal to use towards your down payment. For example, if you have a lot of cash deposits in your account, we can't use that money because the federal government says there's no way to prove that that came from a legal source. That also means that people who are engaged in what the federal government determines in a legal business don't qualify for a mortgage loan unless they have another stream of income. So that's something a lot of people don't know, and that's true. So one of the questions I always have to ask my customers when they come across my desk, which isn't as much, I'm managing now and I'm in Southwest Michigan, but there's a lot of legal marijuana recreational stores in Southwest Michigan where I work. And I have to ask people, because I don't know the names of all the places or anything, who their employer is and what they do. Because it's a dead stop if that's where their income is derived from. So that's a fun fact of the day, I guess. I appreciate all of your time this evening.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. All right. Do we need a motion to adjourn? Okay. I'm going to say we're out of here. Meeting adjourned.
I'm leaving my phone here.
Oh, yeah?